I opened a travel agency in the world of cultivation. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126, Fly. Yang Zhao gave up the original small courtyard and then packed up her bedding and moved to the new second courtyard. This second courtyard is located in a remote area, far from the place where Yang Zhao originally rented. Most of the people around it rent small businesses. Each family rents 1 or 2 rooms, and more than 10 families can live in one courtyard. But her new landlord only wanted to rent out the whole house and did not want the house to be divided into pieces. Under the long-term consumption level of Huanglan Gang, she was able to rent this courtyard at a relatively cheap price. Yang Zhao asked Shenroi to choose the house he lived in first, and then she also chose one for herself. Whether he lived in this room or not, she had to have it. After choosing the room, she began to clean the rooms. There were many rooms, and she cast the dust clearing spell more than 30 times before cleaning the yard. Then she was busy going in and out and bought a lot of bedding, tables and chairs to fill more than a dozen rooms. The remaining rooms were cleaned and left empty. After a hard day's work, she looked at the clean yard in a good mood and found a suitable place to put her bedding under a big tree. Although she is not afraid to go into the house now, she still hates small places. After tidying up the bedding, she began to study the method of flying. This spell is more difficult. Yang Zhao tried it more than 10 times, but couldn't find the trick. She could only ask Shenroi for help. Shenroi took a look at the book and found the problem. You will never be able to learn this flying spell in the book in your life. I was careless about this matter. You should learn flying from me in the future. What's wrong? Yang Zhao was a little confused. Shenroi patted the book in his hand. His flying spell requires the circulation of spiritual power in the meridians, but the meridians above are different from our meridians. You can't fly if you learn it. I wanted you to learn some advanced spells, but you still have to learn some old spells. Listening to the master's words, Yang Zhao remembered that Shenroi didn't teach her spells at the beginning, because all spells would be updated and promoted by many cultivators from generation to generation, becoming more concise and practical. But he had been dead for hundreds of years and was an antique from the Ming dynasty. He was afraid that he couldn't keep up with the development of the times, so he never taught anything about spells and let Yang Zhao learn spells in the spellbook given to her by Zhongsheng. It's okay, as long as you can fly, master. Thank you for your trouble. Shenroi waved his hand and asked her to take out a pen and paper to record it. He began to dictate the flying spell. Then Shenroi taught her step by step how to pinch the fingers and chant the spells, and how to circulate spiritual power. This was indeed much easier to learn. Yang Zhao was able to lift her feet slightly off the ground after trying it twice. Yang Zhao was somewhat excited. Since she could lift her feet off the ground, she no longer pursued height and began to shift her research direction to movement. Shenroi took her mobile phone and began to take videos for him. She was seen running around in the yard with her feet less than 20 centimeters off the ground, her whole body motionless, with a weird smile on her face, and her behavior was like a ghost. Shenroi looked at her and frowned slightly. What are you doing? Is such a low height called flying? You should be higher, at least more than 10 feet. More than 10 feet is more than 3 meters. Yang Zhao smiled awkwardly and began to slowly increase the height. When she was more than 1 meter, she didn't feel any problem. When she was more than 2 meters, it didn't hurt to fall to the ground. But when she reached 3 meters, she was a little nervous and didn't dare to move while floating in the air. Although she knew that, even if she fell to the ground, it would not kill her, and she wouldn't even be injured. But she always felt a little weak in her heart, because she was floating in the air alone without any support. Shenroi looked at her motionless in the air, frowning a little. He waved his hand and the small wooden blocks that had not appeared for a long time were pulled out of the house by his spiritual power. Then, he gently patted the table, and many small wooden blocks floated up into the air, trapping Yang Zhao in the original place. Let me help you. Yang Zhao watched the small wooden blocks emerge with green light and attack her at a speed she had never encountered before. She subconsciously shifted to the side, and the flying spell on her body broke. Bang! She fell down. Shenryu asked leisurely beside her, "Does it hurt?" Yang Zhao rolled over and climbed up, shaking her head with a smile. Although the fall was very sudden, she still reacted and spread a layer of spiritual power under her body to resist the impact of the ground. Shenryu knocked on the table. "Are you still afraid now? I may have to try a few more times." Yang Zhao pinched her fingers and chanted a spell, and she floated up to the sky again and got into the pile of small wooden blocks. Afterwards, as long as the wooden blocks moved, she would fall down if she wanted to hide. Bang, 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 bang. After falling for who knows how many times, Yang Zhao finally learned her lesson and was able to dodge 30% of the attacks from the wooden blocks in the sky. Although Yang Zhao's cultivation had increased, the strength of the small wooden blocks had also increased 100-fold. By night, although she had been prepared, she was still beaten with bruises all over her body by the small wooden blocks. She could only use her spiritual power to activate blood circulation and remove blood stasis. After about 20 minutes, the bruises on her body had disappeared. She ran to Shenryu with a refreshed mind and copied the video on his mobile phone. She edited it a little and posted it on the online platform. Chapter 127, Full. The comments on the internet were the same as usual. Yang Zhao put down her phone without reading it carefully and went out to find a new place to eat. But as soon as she walked out of the door, she found that many children in the neighborhood were secretly looking at their door. Yang Zhao glanced around, and the children were frightened and hid back. She withdrew her gaze inexplicably and continued to walk out. There were no big families nearby, and the food sold was cheap. Yang Zhao drank 2 bowls of meat soup at a stall and ate a few yang mei cakes, then staggered back home. When she arrived at the door of her house, she found that the children were still looking at her secretly. She looked at the courtyard wall that was a little more than 2 meters high and understood. It is estimated that she was seen by these children when she was learning to fly, so one by one was looking at her secretly. It seems that she can't learn to fly in her own yard in the future, so as not to attract too much attention and bring unnecessary trouble. The next day, Yang Zhao and Shenryu came to the beach to practice floating and dodging. This is actually quite easy to learn, except for the first 2 days, when she would fall to the ground. On the 3rd day she was already able to do 2 things at once, flying and dodging wooden blocks at the same time. On the 4th day, Shenryu made a new request, asking Yang Zhao to cast other spells while dodging wooden blocks in the air, which required her to do 3 things at once. So, bang bang bang, bang 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 bang, bang 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 bang. After finally suffering enough and Yang Zhao was able to fly and dodge wooden blocks while casting spells, Shenryu's request changed again. This time, use your gun to pick up all these wooden blocks. You must practice flying until it becomes your instinct. Flying should not consume too much of your attention, otherwise you will be at a disadvantage when fighting with others in the air in the future. Do you understand? Master, don't worry, I understand everything. So, bang 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 bang, bang. This time, Yang Zhao fell with the Gianna long spear. During those days, she could even hear the mocking laughter of the Gianna long spear. The beach was covered with fish scales she had made. At night, the tide formed small puddles. Every morning, she could find some seafood in the puddles. Her happiest moment every day was to pick up a bunch of seafood and steam them for dinner. By the time she had time to check her phone, more than 10 days had passed. Yang Zhao looked through the comments on the video on the online platform. Ha 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 ha, what the hell was that at the beginning? Others were feeling ecstatic, but she was feeling like a ghost. Miss, you have to pay attention to your image. Don't try to be a funny person. You have to know that funny girls don't have love. I found out. I'm the only one who wants to know. Did Miss Yang Zhao in the video really fall to the ground from midair? The sound was really scary. It felt like the fall was very real. It must be a special effect. There must have been wires hanging on. Otherwise how could a person fall so many times and still be fine? He would have gone to increase the hospital's performance. But it doesn't look like wires hanging on. Is this the King Dong that was popular in ancient costume martial arts dramas? Does anyone want to shoot ancient costume martial arts? Please ask this lady to go. Teach those stars what King Dong is. Miss Yang Zhao is cultivating immortals, can't you tell? This video is obviously shot with a mobile phone, and the fall was very real. Didn't you see the marks on the ground? Master, please accept your disciples' greetings. I also want to cultivate immortality. I also want to live forever. I don't want to go to work. The person above, only your last sentence is true. I feel bad. If you want to cultivate immortality together, please join group XXXXXXX. The Immortal Cultivation Warfare Bureau is recruiting people today. Those who can speak foreign languages and deceive people are preferred. If you want to contact me, please click on my avatar. The above are all scammers. Please download the Contrast app. Don't transfer money. Don't transfer money. Children nowadays are too easy to be deceived. The number of people on this account has approached 400,000, and the growth rate is much faster than before. It is estimated that someone has opened a traffic gap for her as a reward for her cooperation in the experiment. The detailed physical examination of the experimental personnel over there has already come out. A few days ago, they applied to Yang Zhao for a second contact experiment, but she was being thrown and had no time to deal with them. There are 26 people coming this time, 5 old people from the last time, plus 21 new people. The summoning process was the same as last time. Yang Zhao first returned the 5 amulets of the Little Bean people to the small government office next to the square, and then waited for them to stamp the beans one by one. Then he took the 26 amulets from them and came to the square to summon the Little Bean people and distributed the amulets one by one according to the numbers. This time, the Little Bean people were mentally prepared and no one dropped out halfway due to respiratory alkali poisoning. But the excitement was beyond words. They looked around and found everything strange. A group of people opened their eyes like frogs and didn't even want to blink. Yang Zhao rented 5 animal carts to take them back to his home. Chapter 128, Second Time. When Yang Zhao led a group of Little Bean people home, the children nearby really cast their curious eyes over again. She let these Little Bean people into the yard and closed the door to block the inquiring eyes from all around. When they arrived in the yard, they began to divide into 4 teams, each led by a person who came here for the first time, leading the newcomers to carry out subsequent tasks. Even though these Little Bean people looked excited, they were trying hard to suppress their emotions. Among them, Zhang Xianjin, who returned with respiratory alkalosis, was embarrassed. Although he had been here for the first experiment, he had no experience in activities here and could only be an embarrassed newcomer. According to other Little Bean people who revealed to Yang Zhao, in fact, the leader did not want Zhang Xianjin to conduct a second experiment at first, fearing that there would be another accident. But he did not give up and wrote several reports to list his advantages, saying that people like him who had problems were good experimental subjects. He also followed the leader like a ghost for several days, even guarding the door when he slept, and the leader agreed after he could not persuade him. This time, Guo Fu Minimum Kyang originally wanted Yang Zhao to transport some experimental equipment, such as a speed meter, an astronomical telescope, etc. But Yang Zhao refused. She was afraid of attracting attention because there were too many people here. In the end, she only brought silver, macro video recorders and a few mobile phones. She had signed a contract with the local government to bring the Little Bean people here for a tour. It was a clear way, but she couldn't guarantee anything else. What if some big shot found out and became interested? She had to be responsible for her own safety. The Little Bean people who came this time had more tasks. A team was taken out by Yang Zhao to buy things. This team had the largest number of people and was the most excited. One team studied the Little Bean people's own bodies, such as breathing and talking. After a long time of experimenting, they found that breathing was just their instinct. The Little Bean people could actually move normally without breathing. As for how to talk, they hadn't experimented yet. They ran quickly in the yard, used their mobile phones to test the highest speed, moved their hands and feet to test the angles that their arms and legs could turn, etc. A team studied the trees, flowers, and plants in the yard, took photos of them roughly, and classified them. Among them, the little octopus raised by Yang Zhao became the group's favorite. It was the only alien creature that they could observe up close. Yang Zhao thought, what if she bought some more small animals? Unfortunately, she didn't have the heart to take care of them. This idea went around in her mind and she passed it. There were also a few people who stayed in the room waiting for someone on the other side to call them offline. Their bodies stayed alone in a room at the base. The people around them would make noises at regular intervals. The main purpose was to test what kind of stimulation could make them feel and go back on their own, such as phone ringing, knocking on the door, fire alarm, cry for help, etc. When it was evening, when Yang Zhao's team came back from shopping, even Yang Zhao wholesaled more than 300 purses for their subsequent use. When she came back, she saw that there were several less Little Bean people at home. In addition to those who hid in the house waiting for people to call them, even those who tested their physical strength had gone back. She was very puzzled about this. A Little Bean person awkwardly took out a few grey beans in his hand to show her. Well, we wanted to test the strength of the body, and then we found that this body is not very resistant to attack, and the physical strength is not good. I would also like to trouble Comrade Yang to ask about the comrades who were beaten to death on the opposite side. Yang Zhao took the waste beans, found an empty room and went in, put the Dao card behind the phone, to contact the other party. After a while, the other party replied. Guo Fumin Qiang said, these people are very healthy now, and they are undergoing detailed physical examinations. Don't worry about your comrades over there. Yang Zhao played the voice to the Little Bean man who followed in, and then put down the phone to find Shen Ryu. Shen Ryu was in his room, chatting with a few Little Bean men. He looked serious, his eyes slightly open, and he was cold. Yang Zhao knocked on the door, and went in to pay his respects. Grandmaster, what are you talking about? You look unhappy. Shen Ryu knocked on the table. They are introducing the history of the Ming dynasty to me, and just introduced the Tumu fort. I never thought that such an intelligent and brave Emperor Tezu would have such an unfilial descendant. He even had the nerve to seize the gate and stage a coup. It seems that he can empathize with him. Even if he is a cultivator, he has been dead for so many years, but he is still indignant about this matter. Yang Zhao has nothing to say. Although Ming Yingzhang abolished the funeral system, it was a good thing, but his reputation as a god of war in Tumu Fort has been passed down for hundreds of years, and he also killed Lord Yu Qian. Just based on these two things, he has been nailed to the pillar of shame, and will never be able to turn over. Then Grandmaster, I won't disturb you. I'll go out for a meal. Zhu Yuan's Hang's unfilial descendants are not the only ones. The following content will make him even more angry. Yang Zhao is using the excuse of eating to hide away, to avoid being cold here. Shen Ryu waved her hand, and continued to chat with the Little Bean people about the history of the Ming dynasty. Yang Zhao found a fish shop this time. Because these shops are located in civilian areas, the dishes are all salty and fragrant, and they are willing to spend a lot of money on ingredients. The special dishes in the shop are also much cheaper than the restaurant next to where she used to live. As the sky gradually darkened, Yang Zhao came back and saw a circle of Little Bean people sitting in the yard, each holding a pen and paper to record the celestial phenomena and draw the stars. It seems that they are very concerned about the distance issue. Of course, this is understandable. What if the two places are too close? Yang Zhao sat upright in her bed and began to practice. Immediately, a Little Bean person moved the video recorder in his hand to point at her. After she finished her practice, the Little Bean person came over with the video recorder to ask for instructions. Watching this video, can I keep it? Yang Zhao nodded indifferently. She is now in the foundation building stage, and may be the first person in the entire Chixin Shenzhou. Leaving her practice video data will be helpful for subsequent development. The man thanked her happily, and ran back to record the star map. The next morning, most of the Little Bean people went back. A few of them had been resting their eyes in the house. They had already said that they wanted to stay and watch Yang Zhao's practice at the seaside, and she agreed. Early in the morning, after Yang Zhao finished his meal, he followed Shen Ryu to the seaside where they often practiced, followed by a few Little Bean people. They first picked up the seafood in the puddle that Yang Zhao smashed and put it in the big pit under Shen Ryu's feet. Then Yang Zhao took off, and a large number of small wooden blocks followed her and flew up. She was able to fly more than 20 meters above the ground without her legs being weak, and now she was practicing flying at this altitude. This time, she was practicing flying in a big circle in the sky, dodging the attacks of the wooden blocks, and casting spells. The word fast was highlighted. She was like a star, flying quickly in the sky with countless small wooden blocks around her, which made people feel relaxed and happy. But this time it was much more difficult than the previous few days, so Yang Zhao inevitably fell from the sky, and the beach was once again covered with fish scale patterns caused by the smashing of objects. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129. Question. The little beam people below were envious, their eyes glowing green. It would be great if I could fly by myself someday. Who wouldn't want to? This is the posture of a god. But Comrade Yang is really strong enough to fall from such a height. Speak properly, don't speak in dialect so as not to misunderstand Comrade Yang. That's because of high physical strength. Comrade Yang is also from the north. He knows what strong enough means. But how high is the cultivation level of this senior Shen? He can actually hold so many small wooden blocks at such a long distance and attack in an orderly manner. The little beam person who just said that Yang Zhao was strong enough also sighed. Yeah, this can no longer be considered human, right? I guess he is not even human. If you can't speak, shut up. If I hear you say something wrong again, you won't be part of this mission next time. Several people were whispering there, and Shenryu ignored them, even though he heard it. In his eyes, these people were all children, and they were of the same race. He was naturally kind to them, and he didn't get angry, even if he said he was not a human. Of course, he is not a human now, he is a ghost. Unfortunately, except for Yang Zhao, no one else knows about this. Yang Zhao practiced until noon. She flew down to take a breath, and took out the seafood from the big pit under the master's feet and steamed it. The little beam people saw that Yang Zhao was eating sweetly, and ran over to try it. Unfortunately, although the little beam people have mouths and taste, they don't have stomachs or anything like that. They can taste a little, but can't eat it. Even so, it can't dispel their enthusiasm. It's a big surprise to taste the seafood in another world. Although it seems a bit wasteful for the little beam people to taste seafood, Yang Zhao didn't stop them. In the end, he stuffed a big opal in his mouth, because he was not full. Since she built her foundation, her appetite has been getting bigger and bigger, and she has been developing in the direction of a glutton. After the remaining little bean people went back, Yang Zhao returned to the boring practice, and continued to smash the fish scale pattern on the beach. Some things can only be finely ground. There is no shortcut. If you fool it, it will fool you. The difference is that, if you fool it, you will save some effort and less pain. Once it fools you, it may cost you your life. After a day like this, Yang Zhao's body was bruised and purple, and she was extremely tired. When she felt the spiritual power running, the meridians in her body were painful. Every time she finished practicing the 3 pure ones and the true Yang meridian, she didn't have a mind to care about anything else, just wanted to sleep and recover her spirit. On the other side, in a large office, there were more than 20 people sitting, some wearing suits, some wearing Navy, Army, and Air Force uniforms, some wearing white coats for experiments, and so on. Everyone held a large stack of information in their hands, sitting in a chair, and flipping through it. Some who read quickly began to lean back in their chairs and close their eyes to rest, while others picked out the key points and read them again. When everyone finished the tour, the host sitting in the main seat knocked on the table with a pen. This is the experimental data that the experimenters risked their lives to get. If you have any questions, you can ask now. The people around looked at each other, and a man in an Air Force uniform asked first. I looked at the experimental human sugar metabolizers, and found that they are more than 3 or 4 times higher than those who lie down and rest normally. The experts in the data suspect that the activities of the little bean people over there are consuming the calories of their own bodies. Is there any reason for this? Will it have adverse effects on the experimental personnel? At this time, a man in a white coat answered this question. According to our speculation, based on the experiment, the increase in glycogen consumption of the experimental people may be similar to doing advanced math problems to lose weight. The constant movement of the human mind increases the consumption of glycogen. That is to say, the traction beams can only carry human consciousness, but cannot replenish energy for consciousness. It still relies on the human body itself. As for adverse effects, there is too little experimental data now, and no adverse effects have been found. As soon as someone started, the people behind him became lively. Have you ever tested how long a person can stay there? We are not planning to do the polarity experiment now. It will put a great strain on the bodies of the experimenters. We are worried that there will be unnecessary accidents. From the experimental results, even if the consciousness is in the traction beam over there, some people can hear the phone ringing here, so why can't some people? We have also speculated that it is probably because the human body instinctively pays attention to its own safety at all times. Those with strong vigilance can hear the ringing, while those with weak vigilance cannot hear it. A man in a suit asked another question. Regarding the star map, can we find the approximate location? Another astronomical scholar stepped forward to answer. There is still no clue. After all, the observation environment over there is very bad. It depends entirely on naked eye observation. If you want to make further discoveries, you still need to rely on astronomical telescopes. But Comrade Yang does not want to accept large experimental equipment such as astronomical telescopes due to safety issues. If you want to make further judgments, you have to see if there is anything in that cultivation world that can observe the universe. Regarding the issue of foreign trade, how should we make foreign exchange reserves? A middle-aged man in a suit, who specializes in economics, answered this question. We have no way to make foreign exchange reserves in a short period of time. Our understanding of the local economy, livelihood, and technology is just the tip of the iceberg. We need to observe a lot, to find an angle, to cut into the other party's economy to obtain foreign exchange. This meeting lasted for more than 2 hours, and the number of people for the next experiment and the requirements for the physical fitness of the experimenters were agreed upon. At the same time, many people volunteered to join the next experiment. In this regard, the military and the experimenters were the most active. The main purpose of the military is to understand the other party and make preparations for safety and defense. The experimenters are driven by their strong desire for knowledge to participate in dangerous experiments. There were 4 or 5 people sitting in a small office on the other side. They were also worried about one thing. The problem now is the problem of cultivation. How can we find a second or even a third cultivation method? We can't have everyone become a disciple of Yang Temple. Several people looked at each other with difficulty. This is a thorny problem, but they don't have a good solution now. Practice is a matter of life and death. Although we have found many methods of practice from Taoist and Buddhist scriptures, we dare not practice these methods without a teacher's guidance. The greatest advantage of Yang Temple is the big ginkgo tree that has become a spirit. It is the only teacher we know of who can guide people in practice. I didn't want to write such a detailed account of the meeting discussion, but to make it easier for everyone to read, I can only write a little more. Chapter 130, Steady Development. No one in the office meeting had a good solution to this problem. Finally, they decided to ask professionals in this field. Yang Zhao was also a little confused when facing this problem. She was still a student, and now she relied on Shenroy's all-round care to complete the 100-day foundation building. So she pushed this problem to Shenroy without any guilt. This problem was not a problem in front of this veteran cultivator. Yang Zhao took out his mobile phone to record him. First, you sent the Buddhist treasures back a few days ago. They can choose to accept the initiation of the treasures, but those with weak willpower had better not touch this thing. Otherwise they will easily be influenced by the memories of others in it, and become the reincarnation of a certain monk in a daze. Second, come here through the fairy beans and find those relatively declining sects in this world. This world has been promoting the provincial school system. In the end, some old sects basically could not recruit disciples. Since these sects have been outside the cultivation framework of this world, they have the qualifications to accept disciples on their own for the continuation of the sect, and it is impossible for the provincial school to accept people from outside. The third one is a little more difficult. Those who are particularly talented and willpower can try the land of clan souls. Our gods have long died, but their thrones are still there. The thrones will provide cultivation methods and experience to those cultivators they recognize, so as to help them ascend to the throne. However, this method basically means that a group of people are fighting for a throne, and there will be many casualties every time. Throne. China has many gods and immortals, and there are thousands of them in total. Among them, there are at least hundreds of famous and powerful ones. And because of the global village, the world's major mainstream beliefs have a large popular base in China. For example, the Christianity that Yang Zhao saw in the land of clan souls. Can the throne of Jesus and angels also be snatched by the Chinese? Exclamation mark. For example, the northwest region of their own country is a vast traditional Islamic territory, so can they also snatch the throne of Islam led by Allah? Sure enough, the land of clan souls is a treasure accumulated in the process of national development. Yang Zhao forwarded this video to Guo Fu Minimum Kayang, and they started scratching their heads again. The first method is actually the best to implement now, but the danger has also been made clear by Shen Ruoyu. If the willpower of the person who is initiating is a little weak, he will be influenced by the memory in the Buddha treasure and become another person. A Buddhist monk whose thinking is still stuck in ancient China, especially before the southern and northern dynasties, is not in the interests of modern people. Once such monks have great magic power, they will be committed to developing Buddhist beliefs and will want to influence politics from the side or even the front. Since the Zhao dynasty, the ruling class in my country has been constantly fighting against theocracy. Otherwise, in the myth of Dao's flood control, Dao would not have led this salvation project as a mortal. The 3 was and 1 clan destroyed Buddhism, which was the suppression of the Buddhist theocracy by the feudal ruling class. Even if there is a god, it is impossible to let this god impact the rule of the country and affect the livelihood of the people. Therefore, the experimenters involved in this matter will face considerable risks. The second one needs to find those hidden sects, and Yang Zhao needs to look for them everywhere in this world. The second one is to enter the land of clan souls. Generally, only cultivators in the foundation building period can enter the land of clan souls freely. People with cultivation below this standard can only enter with the help of formations. This requires Yang Zhao to find merchants who are willing to sell this kind of formation, but with the attitude of blocking knowledge in this world, it is estimated that it is not easy to buy. Therefore, be prepared to be stabbed and bleed heavily. But the man is innocent, but the jade is guilty. Once Yang Zhao can really take out this level of wealth, and does not have the matching cultivation and power, her fate can be imagined. Yang Zhao needs to do both of these things. Now everyone agrees that Yang Zhao is a unique person, and her pace is to seek stability. Everyone agrees that she should be stable for 20 to 30 years under Shen Ruoyu's wings. These 20 to 30 years are the time for Yang Zhao to develop steadily, and it is also a buffer period for the country to make knowledge reserves, talent reserves, and material reserves for cultivation, so that the world will have more foundation to welcome this great change that has not happened in 1,000 years. Guo Fu Minimum Kayang finally sent a message to Yang Zhao, telling her that she can search for information about the last 2 things in her spare time. This proposal hit Yang Zhao's heart, and she immediately threw these 2 things aside. What she needs to do now is to accumulate her own strength. She has just entered the foundation building period and needs a lot of time to adapt to and enrich this stage. And now she can't even fly neatly, and she hasn't learned any other spells at all, and she hasn't even learned any side jobs such as alchemy, building tools, and formations. She really lacks time, and it's not just her. Guo Fu Minimum Kayang also lacks it. In this way, Yang Zhao ushered in the third Bean Man experiment. This time, there are only more than 30 people, and the increase in the number of people is not much, but Yang Zhao found out through the book that more than half of the personnel have been transferred. According to their words and deeds, it can be clearly found that the proportion of soldiers has increased. They pay more attention to the research of the traction bean itself, and there are more and more experiments to test the biological limits of the traction bean. So she often sees the little bean people doing parkour, weightlifting, light body fast running, weighted fast running, etc. in the yard. The small yard is full of more than 30 little bean people, leaving no place for people to step. During the experiment of the little bean people, Shenroi developed a hobby of asking those little bean people about the history after the Ming dynasty. He left home when he was a teenager and never went back. Home has a beautiful memory in his heart. Unfortunately, the prosperous times are short-lived, and he is often angry about some things that have past history, and his mood is low. Sometimes he gets angry and smashes the table. Usually at this time, Yang Zhao will avoid him for fear of being accidentally angered. But it was obvious that she was worrying too much. Shenroi was good at cultivating her mind and character, and she had never taken her anger out on others. In a blink of an eye, Yang Zhao arrived at the day of the Clan Soul Land competition again. This time, her cultivation level had greatly increased, and she was very confident about this matter. But Shenroi said that she would definitely not be able to get in. You are from the outside world, and it is good enough that you can get some benefits when you practice Ki. Now that you have established your foundation, they will not allow you to go there to sweep everyone, or even compete for this Clan Soul Land. This is not in the interests of the major families. Sure enough, Shenroi's speculation was correct. Yang Zhao waited for a long time that morning, and even went to the Soul Land to look for it, but he did not find the passage leading to the foreign Soul Land. Chapter 131, Practice. Although she knew that the people in this world were on guard against her, she did not expect that the action would be so fast. She had just established her foundation for 2 days, and the other party closed the door to compete for the Clan Soul Land for her. Yang Zhao had no idea what to do with this change. She could only go out and have a good meal to relieve her depression. Afterwards, she began to ask Shenroi about the position of the god. Shenroi did not say much about this matter, but only advised her to practice well and not to ask about the position of the god now. But Yang Zhao did not give up and kept pestering him. Finally, Shenroi had no choice but to say one sentence. Aren't you afraid that in the end only one god of the land will choose you? What will you do then? Well, the fire of passion in Yang Zhao's heart was extinguished by Shenroi with cold water. The land god is the most basic god in mythology. In the novel Journey to the West, the gods such as the earth god are bullied the most. Therefore, competing for the position of the god is a matter with a very high upper limit and a very low lower limit, with the uncertainty of luck. Now she has an orthodox cultivation method, a master to protect her, and her cultivation is still steadily improving. She can take a step-by-step approach to practice and find a way to success. She has not yet reached the point where she has to rely on luck, so she temporarily gave up this idea. When Yang Zhao was able to climb to a height of 100 meters and fly freely in the sky, his heart was filled with a sense of joy. Yang Zhao sorted out the videos that Shenroi had recorded of him practicing flying these days and posted them online. She changed the name of the previous video to Practice Flying, Part 1. This video is named Practice Flying, Part 2. She usually didn't name her previous videos, and even if she did, they were labeled with top film and television special effects. These are the only 2 videos she has that are not labeled with special effects. She will slowly weaken the label of top film and television special effects and replace it with cultivation to lay a good foundation for the future. When she became more and more skilled in flying, Shenroi finally agreed to let go and began to teach him thunder magic. While teaching, he complained to Yang Zhao that there were too many spells in thunder magic. When Shenroi was young, he disliked the fact that there were too many spells in the various Taoist spells of Yunnyang Temple. The fastest one took a cup of tea to perform, which was too time consuming. At that time, he proposed to simplify these spells. Unfortunately, he died before he could hear the news that the spells were successfully simplified, so he always disliked the troubles of the spells he learned. Yang Zhao was also a little surprised when she looked at the long spell in front of her. She just read a few sentences and pointed to the sentence subtle vacuum, Xingxiao Zhao Gang, and asked, "But master, when you recite the thunder spell, you only recite these 2 sentences." "That's because my cultivation is high. I can only recite these 8 words with my cultivation, and the power is greatly reduced accordingly, but when I fight with others, I don't have that much time to recite the spell. Of course, others don't have it either. This thunder spell is more dangerous. Yang Zhao didn't dare to practice in her own yard, so she went to the beach to practice. First, she had to memorize all these spells to ensure that she didn't stutter when reciting the spells. Then she had to practice her speaking speed. The more fluent she was, the better. Finally, she had to endure being struck by lightning, because when she cast the thunder spell, she was not very good at controlling the area that was attacked by it. The lightning seemed to have its own ideas and would strike her several times every day. No wonder when Yang Zhao wanted to learn thunder spells from Shenroi at the beginning, she was rejected by the other party because her cultivation was too shallow to withstand the thunder strikes and to prevent her from being struck to death by the thunder and lightning she had summoned, which became a huge joke. These days, Yang Zhao felt that her electrolytes were separated by the thunder strikes, and she was afraid that the water in her body would be ionized frequently, and there would be a danger of decomposition into hydrogen and oxygen. But she didn't dare to stop, and could only endure the roar of thunder and lightning in her ears, endure the severe pain and burns from the thunder strikes on her body, and continue to summon thunder spells. Every bit of her progress in magic was exchanged for the injuries and sweat on her body, and she couldn't make a false statement. Even Shenroi praised her for her willingness to endure hardships and not fearing pain. These days, whether flying or practicing thunder spells, she was more exhausted with clothes. In her mother's words, she was eating clothes, not wearing clothes. So she went to a low-end clothing store and bought a lot of men's coarse cloth clothes in bulk. The owner of the clothing store was so happy to see her buy so many clothes that he not only gave her a discount, but also gave her several pairs of socks and shoes. Unfortunately, these clothes broke down again after a few days, so Yang Zhao had to continue to buy more. After Yang Zhao's thunder method stabilized a little, Yang Zhao practiced thunder method for 2 hours in the morning to keep his hands feeling, and practiced Jayana long spear for another 2 hours. In the afternoon, he spent all his time on the low-level spell book given by Zhongsheng. Although those spells were low-level, they were very powerful when cast with the cultivation of the foundation building period, and the spells on them were much simpler, so they were more practical than thunder method. Chapter 132, Sweeping the City. Time passed slowly for more than 2 months. The cross-border experiment of the two worlds' little beam people has been carried out more than 10 times, and the number of rotations has reached an exaggerated 600 people. The trade volume in 2 months has soared to more than 100,000 taels of silver. According to the current world silver price, this is more than 20 million yuan. The scope of their purchases has changed from buying all the small magic tools available in the market at the beginning to Yang Zhao going to the Fuxu to buy various mature talismans, magic tools, formations, spells, etc. invented by students themselves. Although these things are not mature in design, they are sufficient as a starting point for analyzing and studying the basic science of cultivation. As long as it can be studied, it is science, and it will not be involved in any feudal superstition. Now Yang Zhao is a celebrity in the Fuxu. Everyone knows that she will accept any invention regardless of whether it is good or bad, and the price she gives is generous. It's just that the requirements for product descriptions are a little strict, but for the sake of silver, they all think that this is just the strict character of Yang Dashenren, and it is definitely not picky. However, there were not many products that could be sold to her in the Fuxu. The teachers in the Fuxu strictly checked the inventions of these students. If there were any that exceeded the standard, they would not allow the students to sell them to Yang Zhao, an outsider. Yang Zhao had no choice but to take time to return to Kangcheng. She first visited the city Lord Zeng of Kangcheng, asked for a letter from him, and went to the Fuxu in Kangcheng. However, the Fuxu in Kangcheng was relatively small, with few students, and her gains were not as great as those in Huanglangang Fuxu. Then she scanned all the open vein leaves that could be bought in Kangcheng, and then returned to Huanglangang. She had no choice but to change her mind and go to her old employer Shandafang. Shandafang in Huanglangang was still in its early stages. Now the workshop and workers were ready, but sales had not yet opened up. Shopkeeper Ran was racking his brains over this matter. At this time, Yang Zhao took the initiative to come to the door with silver. Shopkeeper Ran personally received Yang Zhao and the 5 little bean people behind her. The two sides exchanged a few polite words and began to get down to business. Shandy Fang was originally a weapons workshop, and Shopkeeper Ran naturally knew the purpose of their visit. Before Yang Zhao and the others spoke, she handed over a list. Because you are from the outside world, the weapons you can choose are all on this list. Please take a closer look first. Yang Zhao took it and quickly glanced at it, then handed the list to the 5 little bean people next to him. There are really geniuses in learning languages in this world. Even if they have just been exposed to a new language for a short time, they can already write fluently. Among the 5 little bean people who came today to our special talents of this type, the list listed more than 10 basic weapons, and the magic array engraved on the weapons was written next to it. Some of the magic arrays were also circled in red, and the price of the weapons was at the back. One of the little bean people pointed at the red circle and asked what it meant. Shopkeeper Ran understood clearly. The ones in the red circle are semi-restrictive formations. That is, if you want this formation on your weapon, we can engrave it on your weapon, but this formation will be embedded with a self-destruct formation. She didn't say the following words, but everyone understood. This meant that they were forbidden to analyze this formation. Once they moved recklessly, the formation would self-destruct. Xiaodao people were not familiar with these weapons, so Shopkeeper Ran specially recruited a young man to sit next to them and explain each weapon one by one. From what metal the weapon was made of, to the basic values of the weapon's strength, toughness, weight, and service life, to how much spiritual power was required when using the weapon. It was the first time that Yang Zhao knew that the unit of spiritual power here was called entropy chang. To put it crudely, the spiritual power that can just activate a spell is 1 entropy chang. The young man was not very clear about the specific definition. She tilted her head and asked Shopkeeper Ran, who was drinking tea next to her, how to measure the entropy chang value of spiritual power. Shopkeeper Ran said that there was a special magic tool that could measure it, but this kind of magic tool was not something that could be sold. The little bean people beside them listened to them with their ears erect, and when they heard that they couldn't sell anything, they turned their thoughts back to the paper. Things that can be obtained are good things, and things that can't be obtained lose their color in their eyes. These little bean people compared the list with the list, picked out 10 weapons, and asked for 100 pieces of each. A basic weapon of Shandy Fang is sold at a minimum of 100 pieces, and if it is less, it will not be enough for them to open a furnace. Yang Zhao told the little bean people about this news when he came. Yang Zhao acted as an introducer this time. She introduced the two parties together, and the rest was decided by the two parties themselves. Among these 10 weapons, the most expensive one is 50 or 60 taels, and the cheap one is more than 10 taels. Shopkeeper Long called to gentlemen again, and the 3 of them and the 6 little bean people began to discuss the price. Basically, each weapon was slashed down by a penny at the end, and this deal was finalized after 4 or 5 days of grinding. In this way, Shopkeeper Ran praised the little bean people for being straightforward and not dragging their feet. Generally speaking, for such a large transaction, it may take both parties a month to negotiate. Chapter 133, finalized. The deal was finally discounted, with the final payment of 52,000 taels of silver for 1,000 weapons, and the construction period of 17 days. After the two parties signed the contract, Yang Zhao took out 3,000 taels of silver from his Kyankan bag, and gave it to Rong, the shopkeeper, as a deposit for this deal. After the deal was finalized, Yang Zhao took the little bean man and Rong, the shopkeeper, to the government office again, where they signed a weapon safety contract. The main content of the contract was that Yang Zhao and the little bean man were responsible for these weapons, and if there was any trouble, they would be held accountable to the end. The chief officer who signed the contract also laughed and joked, "Of course, what we hope most is that these weapons will never appear in this world again from now on." This joke carried the government's attitude on this matter, and no one dared to treat it as a joke. After 17 days, Yang Zhao brought the little bean man to inspect the goods. They followed Rong, the shopkeeper, to a large factory where the weapons were stored. The weapons were still angry, brand new and bright, and murderous. There was a big thing in the center of the factory, which looked to be more than 2 meters long and nearly 3 meters high. Shopkeeper Ang told them that this was the magic weapon used to detect weapons. Then she asked Yang Zhao for a few magic weapons. Yang Zhao took out the magic sword given to him by the old shark and placed it on the detection instrument. In a few seconds, a beautiful voice reported the various values of the magic sword and even told everyone at the end that this magic sword had collided with other high-level magic weapons, leaving flaws that were difficult to repair. The little beam people stared at Yang Zhao, and she nodded. This magic sword had collided head-on with the Gianna long spear, so it was inevitable that it would be damaged. Then a little beam person took out the protective talisman given by the government, and Shopkeeper Long took the talisman and placed it on the instrument. The results given by the instrument were also normal and similar to what they knew. Then Shopkeeper Long called the workers to pick up these weapons and check them one by one with this instrument under their eyes. It took 4 hours to complete the inspection of the 1000 weapons. After that, Rang also took out a weapon quality guarantee contract, stating that a refund could be made within 1 month due to quality problems. After both parties signed the contract, Yang Zhao also paid the balance. This was a little troublesome when transporting. Yang Zhao's Kayankan bag was at most 3 cubic meters, and she couldn't carry so many weapons at all. And pushing the weapons out directly would also cause misunderstandings and panic among civilians. Yang Zhao used this as an excuse to borrow a large Kayankan bag from Rang. However, the price of the Kayankan bag was more expensive than this batch of weapons. She could only sign a contract with Rang, and the borrowing and returning date was set within 1 day, and she also put down 10,000 taels of silver. In fact, Yang Zhao had to do this. The volume of the things transported by her Dao card could not be too large. If the volume exceeded half a meter by half a meter, it would not be transported. Obviously, many weapons were longer than half a meter, so she could only borrow a large Kayankan bag from Rang. Then she took the bag full of weapons and led the little bean man back home. She did not dare to stop for a moment to transport the things back and urged the other party to receive it quickly and send the Kayankan bag back to her. Guo Fumin Qiang, this bag is very useful. Can you buy it? Yang Zhao, I can't buy it. This technology is blocked. I can't buy it, even if I have money. This large Kayankan bag was lent to me by Rong, the shopkeeper of Shandifang. I have to return it to her today. The meaning is very simple. This matter is related to Yang Zhao's credit and safety. Rang's willingness to lend it to her is a great favor. She can't let him down. Guo Fumin Qiang, I understand. You wait for 20 minutes to cast a spell and you can transport this Kayankan bag. Yang Zhao cast a spell as soon as the time came. After the Kayankan bag was transported, she returned the thing to Rong and took back the deposit. She was also curious about the whereabouts of those weapons, so she asked Guo Fumin Qiang. The answer given there was also very simple: into the laboratory, out to sea, and up the mountain. It is said that these 200 items are not enough, especially the laboratory is urging them every day. Because the roaring west wind is not on their own land, their safety cannot be guaranteed. After those people opened their meridians and spirits, some of them were sent to the highest mountain. The spiritual energy there is relatively lively. Although the spiritual energy is also heavy, it is one of the few places where they can practice. These days, she ran back and forth between Huanglang Port and Kangcheng just to collect the vein leaves used for opening the meridians. But this thing also has trading restrictions for her as an outsider. She had no choice but to send a generous gift and asked Xiao, the girl in the pulse opening hall, to help buy a batch of 200 pieces. But everyone knows that this generous gift is for Xiao's aunt, and it is she who has the ability to buy so many vein leaves. Xiao is a bridge and a channel for communication between the two sides. Chapter 134, Separation. Despite the help from Miss Xiao, it is obvious that the open vein leaves that Yang Zhao can buy in Huanglangang and Kangcheng are a drop in the bucket for the domestic demand. In addition, these days she only sends videos of cultivation and Huanglangang street scenes, and the video content is highly homogeneous, which has been complained by many netizens. Her account has entered a period of stagnation of fans, and the corresponding incense has not increased much. Regarding her own cultivation, she thought about it and decided to change cities to have a look. After this busy period, Yang Zhao had more than 20,000 taels of silver in her hand, which was the basis for her to travel. Yang Zhao revealed this idea to Shenryu, wanting to hear his opinion. Incense is a big deal, and it's a good thing that you want to go out for a walk. You are cautious and don't like to get into trouble. I don't worry that you will get into any trouble. Going out for a walk can also broaden your horizons, but I can't accompany you. Yang Zhao was surprised. Master? Shenryu smiled and took out a thick book from the house and handed it to Yang Zhao. Yang Zhao, you also know that I'm a ghost. I have been away from my body for so long relying on my cultivation. It's time for me to go back. These are the spells that you can learn and the elixirs that I have memorized in the past few days. Please keep them. I will be preparing to return to Kangcheng in the next 2 days. Yang Zhao, Master, is there something wrong at Yunnyang Temple in Nanshan, Kangcheng? Shenryu shook her head and pushed the book in her hand to her. Nothing, it's really that I've been out for too long. Although I had a lot of fun, I have to go back, otherwise my soul can't stand it. Yang Zhao knew that there was no room for maneuver in this matter. She took the book, suppressed the uneasiness in her heart, and said with a smile, Master, I will take you back, and then I will set out from Kangcheng. Okay, I will explain these things in the book to you in detail. Remember them well. This will be of great help to you in nurturing the golden elixir. Then Yang Zhao moved out a set of tables and chairs, and the two sat in the yard. Shenryu began to explain the spells and elixirs in the book to her in detail. Yang Zhao recorded the whole process with his mobile phone, for fear that he would mix them up. Some of the spells in this book recorded the thunder method that Shenryu was best at. He wrote in detail the details of the use of this spell, when and how to use it, and it can be seen that he has a lot of experience in thunder method. The other part is some spells he has seen. He just wrote some power shallowly, but because he has never practiced, naturally he has no experience in practice to give Yang Zhao. The book also contains the art of controlling weapons, which teaches cultivators to better control their weapons. There are relatively few elixirs in this book, and only 2 are recorded, one for improving cultivation, and the other for resisting inner demons. It seems that Shenryu attaches great importance to the inner tribulation that Yang Zhao went through when he was promoted. This teaching lasted for 2 days, and on the 3rd day, Yang Zhao and Shenryu set off to return to Kangcheng. Originally, Yang Zhao wanted to take a boat back, but Shenryu said that this was a good opportunity for her to practice long distance flying, and suggested that they fly back. Yang Zhao thought about it, and it was okay. It was her first time to fly such a long distance, and with Shenryu accompanying her, she felt more confident. Facts have proved that short distance flights are different from long distance flights. She basically has to rest after flying for 1 or 2 hours. Shenryu, in fact, with your current cultivation, you can fly for 2 hours in a row, but you can't change your habit of not saving spiritual power, which causes you to always get tired easily during the flight. Yang Zhao knew that she had this problem, but she had never flown for such a long time, and had never personally experienced the disadvantages of this problem. After she took a breath, Shenryu began to force her to adjust her spiritual power and fly slowly. But even though she knew what was going on, it was not easy to change. She would always consume more spiritual power by inertia while flying. Shenryu would stop her at this time and ask her to readjust. After 3/4 of the journey, Yang Zhao finally grasped the rhythm of the long distance flight, and she flew back in one breath for the last part of the journey. When they arrived at Yunnyang Temple in Kangcheng, Yang Zhao was so tired that she didn't even want to talk. Shenryu looked at her and smiled. After she took a breath, he spoke, I don't have anything good in my hand. After we say goodbye today, I will give you 3 more divine thunders to protect your safety. After that, he pinched his fingers and chanted a spell and gently tapped Yang Zhao's eyebrows with 2 fingers. When he took his hand back, Yang Zhao stood up and thanked him. Thank you for your care, Master. Do you have any other instructions for me? Shenryu turned the silver conch in her hand. If you have time, go to the sea area over there in Hay City to visit the old shark. I have discussed with her that when the teleportation array here is repaired, I will give him some incense to let him look after this gate. He did not refuse on the spot. You should go there more often to keep in touch with him. Yang Zhao subconsciously glanced at the big pit on the ground of Yunayang Temple. Master Gongsun here is gone, and a new gatekeeper is indeed needed. However, due to the superposition of various reasons, no one in his hometown is qualified for this important position, so the master thought of looking for his old friend, the old shark. No wonder the two of them got together when they had nothing to do during that period, probably to discuss this matter. Master, do you know his address? It's hard to identify the address in the sea. When you get to that sea area, just ask any sea creature. They basically know where the old shark lives. Yang Zhao, Master, don't worry. I will definitely take care of this matter. Shenryu smiled carefreely. Wulian Xianzhen, see you next time. After that, his body slowly became weak and disappeared. Master? Yang Zhao didn't react. Seeing him disappear, he felt a little empty in his heart, but he cheered up and bowed respectfully to the place where Shenryu's body was buried. Master, then Yang Zhao will take his leave. Then she walked down the mountain step by step. Looking at the familiar scenery around her, she couldn't help but think of a few months ago when she just came here. She was wary of everything around her, and the only thing she dared to eat was bird eggs. Now, she has built her foundation and has eaten a lot of delicious food, but she still wants to taste the taste of bird eggs again. She deftly climbed up a tree with a bird's nest, took a bird's egg from the nest and jumped down. She pinched her fingers with one hand to summon a small flame, roasted the bird's egg and ate it. Instantly, she felt that the most delicious food in the world was just like this. But after a while, Yang Zhao felt that her previous sigh was a bit hypocritical. She walked quickly to the bottom of the mountain, turned her spiritual power, flew into the sky, and flew towards Kangcheng. When she arrived in the city, she first searched all the vine leaves that could be bought on the market, and then set off back to Huanglang Port. She still had things to do in Huanglang Port, and she had to go back to finish them. Chapter 135, Entrustment. After Yang Zhao returned to Huanglang Port, she first swept all the open veined leaves in the city and transported them back. She also asked about the country's large cities in the taverns and tea houses, and finally decided to go to the capital of the country, Lijiang. The capital of a country is often the place with the best public security, and is known as the place of 100 virtues. She sorted out the rented house, picked some gifts in the market, and took the little octopus to the sea area, where the sea market was opened. As soon as it entered the sea, the little octopus seemed very happy. It climbed out of the jar and swam in circles in the sea. Yang Zhao felt a little guilty when he saw it so excited. The little octopus was too depressed to follow her. Every day, it stayed in a small jar as an ornamental animal waiting for her to tease it. But it has its own thoughts, and it must have been very depressed in the past few months. Now the weather is getting colder and colder. A few days ago, there were small snowflakes floating in Huanglang Port. Yang Zhao didn't pay attention to these, and almost froze the little octopus to death. Now it is almost 1 year old, and has become an adult. It should be considered carefully whether to stay or go. Yang Zhao waited for the little octopus to calm down, and began to ask for its opinion. There is no doubt that the little octopus yearns for the sea more. As soon as she finished speaking, the little octopus fell on a big rock. It kept adjusting the skin color of its body and slowly hid itself. This meant that it had the ability to survive on its own. Yang Zhao used her spiritual power to take the little octopus back into the jar and said, I know what you mean. You come with me first. I'll ask Senior Qin if I can find someone to take care of you. The old shark's surname was Qin. When Yang Zhao followed her memory to the place where the sea market was set up, the sea market here had long been closed. Now there were only huge shells left on the seabed, waiting to be a place for tourists to live again when the sea market opens next year. Unknown small fish and shrimps were wandering around, making this place even more empty and cold, and the prosperous scene of the past could no longer be seen. If it weren't for the big shells around, she really thought she had come to the wrong place. Yang Zhao walked around a lot before finding a spiritual sea creature and asked him for the address of the old shark. Moreover, this sea creature was a little wary at first, but when he heard that the person she was looking for was an old shark, he became enthusiastic and insisted on leading the way. Yang Zhao squeezed the bracelet on his wrist and then confirmed that this sea creature was just a key training person, and then nodded and followed him carefully. At this time, the sea creature led her to a large reef and began to shout at the top of his voice. Ancestorkin, Ancestorkin, the human race who is looking for trouble with you is here again. Yang Zhao was stunned. How did she become the one looking for trouble? Who is so ignorant that he comes to trouble me again? An old voice sounded in her ears, and a huge shark in the distance quickly approached. In a few seconds, it came to the reef, scaring the surrounding small fish and shrimps to flee, and even the sea creature who showed Yang Zhao the way ran away. Yang Zhao was afraid of being misunderstood, so he hurriedly bowed and greeted. Junior Yang Zhao from Yunayang Temple meets Senior Qin. How are you? My master Shenroi was thinking about you. After the shark saw who was coming, it quickly shrank into a little old man. So it's you. How are you? Why are you here? Yang Zhao took out a gift from his Kayankan bag and handed it over. My master has returned to Kangcheng. Because I'm also leaving Huanglang Port, my master asked me to come and say hello to you. Old Sharkin took the gift and said, your master is narrow-minded. He was afraid that I would forget about that matter, so he asked you to remind me. Yang Zhao didn't want to talk about the elders, so he could only smile at the side. Old Sharkin, okay, you have seen it, you can go now. I will think about the matter of your master again. Yang Zhao, senior, there is one more thing. I have a little octopus in my hand that wants to go back to the sea. Can I put it in your sea area? She took off the jar on her waist and let old Sharkin take a look at the little octopus. The old shark looked down and said, he's not a kid anymore. He'll be an adult in a month or so. He can have kids. Do you still need me to take care of him? Yang Zhao smiled awkwardly. Senior, you don't need to take care of him. I feel your sea area is safer. No one will bully him. The old shark surnamed Qin looked at her like the mother in the story of a loving mother who spoils her child. Who dares to bully him with his blue circles? Yang Zhao was speechless. The old shark surnamed Qin waved his hand and took back the sea creature that had just run away. Okay, throw it down. The sea creature just passed on false information. You can give him 10 taels of silver and ask him to take care of this little thing. Yang Zhao happily bowed to the old shark surnamed Qin. Thank you, senior. I'm sorry for the trouble. Then he looked at the trembling sea creature in the hands of the old shark surnamed Qin with kindness and took out 10 taels of silver and stuffed it into his hand. I'm Yang Zhao from Yunayang Temple. This is my little octopus. I haven't given it a name yet. I'll ask you to take care of him from now on. The sea creature looked at the old shark surnamed Qin with tears in his eyes. Seeing that he had no intention of changing his mind, he could only take the 10 taels of silver and the jar from Yang Zhao. I've said it, I will only take care of him until he reaches adulthood. After that, I won't care about him anymore in more than a month. Yang Zhao, just take care of him until he reaches adulthood. Thank you very much. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136, Moving. The sea creature looked at the jar with despair. The old shark surnamed Qin loosened his grip, and the sea creature kicked its hind legs and disappeared. Yang Zhao bowed to thank the old shark surnamed Qin for his help. Thank you for your trouble, I'm grateful. The old shark surnamed Qin waved his hand. Okay, you have nothing to do now, go. Yang Zhao saw that he was a little impatient, and it was not good to disturb him too much. The two of them did not have such a deep friendship. The one who had a friendship was Shenroi and Shen's master. She bowed properly and was about to leave, but before she stood up, a familiar voice came from a distance. Senior Qin, I'm disturbing you. I, Zhangsheng, came to visit you today. Yang Zhao straightened up and looked in the direction of the voice. Sure enough, he saw a familiar figure, Zhongsheng, the uncle of Brother Leopard's master. He was so handsome that people felt that he would shine wherever he stood. This person was a bit foul in terms of appearance, and the Kyankan bag in her arms was given by him. There were more than a dozen people following behind Zhongsheng, both men and women. They were very fast and arrived at the big reef in the blink of an eye. The old shark surnamed Qin looked at them impatiently. Since you know how to disturb me, why are you here? I don't welcome you here. Zhongsheng smiled elegantly, as if he didn't care about the cold words of the old shark surnamed Qin. I know that the senior doesn't welcome you, but I still have to discuss the matter with the senior. After he finished speaking, he glanced at Yang Zhao, which meant to let the strangers leave. Yang Zhao was a little embarrassed standing here, but he was embarrassed to pretend that he didn't know him. After all, the Kyankan bag was still in his arms. Hello, Senior Zhang. Zhongsheng smiled and nodded. She turned around and said goodbye to the old shark. Since Senior Qin has something else to do here, I won't disturb you. This time, the old shark looked at the interaction between the two of them and raised his eyebrows to ask Yang Zhao, do you know Zhongsheng? Yang Zhao, well, I met him once a few months ago. Old shark surnamed Qin. Okay, go now. Stay away from people like this in the future, okay? Yang Zhao was embarrassed to hear this. He didn't dare to nod or shake his head. He could only smile silently. Senior Qin, I'll take my leave. Yang Zhao took a few steps back and turned to swim away. Before she had taken a few steps, she heard the old shark surnamed Qin driving Zhongsheng away. I didn't agree with you last time, and no one can do it. You should leave quickly and don't be an eyesore here. Senior Qin, we are not here to cause trouble to you. Your territory has been in the same place for more than 400 years. Why did you suddenly move with us this year? You should know how much trouble your move will bring to the sea tribes along the way. Zhongsheng's voice was full of doubts and admonitions, but he was still unhurried. The old shark surnamed Qin was not so good-tempered. My territory could have moved with it, and the contract hasn't expired yet. Why are you in such a hurry? As for the sea creatures along the way, those who are capable can eat me, and those who are not capable can get out. You too. Yang Zhao couldn't help but speak faster when he heard the two of them quarreling. He only heard half of Zhongsheng's answer. Senior, you should know that for us, the stability of the coastline is more important than one. The second half of the sentence was no longer clear, but it didn't prevent Yang Zhao from guessing the meaning of his next sentence. The meaning was simple, to let the old shark return to the original place for the tranquility of the coastline. But the meaning was too shocking. What did my territory could have moved with it? The more she thought about it, the more confused she became. With a surge of spiritual power in her body, she sped up and left here. Yang Zhao ran quickly in the water according to her original memory, then jumped out of the water and headed straight for the port of Huanglang Port without looking back. When she arrived at the place, Yang Zhao found the high platform where the Black Rock bird put the carriage and flew directly over. There were many people queuing up to buy tickets. She waited for a while, and a Black Rock came back from the sea and put the carriage on the platform. Yang Zhao looked around and found a middle-aged woman who had just got off the carriage of the Black Rock. He went over and saluted. Excuse me, sister. I want to ask, do I buy tickets to Falling Star Island here? The lady turned her head with some vigilance when she found someone intercepting her. Seeing that Yang Zhao was also a woman, she felt relieved. Falling Star Island is too far away from Huanglang now. With the physical strength of the Black Rock, it can't fly there now. The Black Rock can only fly there in the summer, when Falling Star Island is closer to Huanglang. After saying that, she turned around and inserted into the crowd without looking back. In a few breaths, she disappeared in the crowd. Yang Zhao didn't give up and randomly found a few people to ask, but the answers were similar. As a result, Falling Star Island is now far away from Huanglang. But in the summer, you can still ride the Black Rock to pick up meteors there. But in the winter, the Black Rock can't fly there because the distance between the two places is too far. Yang Zhao left the port in a daze and rented a beast cart to enter the city. People are not allowed to fly freely in the sky above Huanglang City. The house in Huanglang has been vacated, so she found a good inn and asked for a room. She told the waiter in the inn not to disturb her. The waiter agreed with good temper. He was knowledgeable as a waiter. What kind of guests had he not seen? Yang Zhao went into the house and locked the door. He took the road card from his neck and put it on the back of his mobile phone and sent a message to Guo Fumin Qiang. Yang Zhao, you experimenters have been standing the stick on the ground here for so long. Have you measured the circumference of this planet? Have you found anything wrong with the continent under your feet? The easiest way to measure the circumference of a planet is to stand a stick on the ground. Guo Fumin Qiang, do you know anything? We did measure it for a long time and found something wrong. The data shows that if this planet conforms to the laws of the universe, then the continent under your feet is a little abnormal. Yang Zhao, I just heard that the continent under my feet seems to be moving and the speed should be very fast. Guo Fumin Qiang, are you sure? Yang Zhao, I'm not sure. I just heard someone say it, but according to your research, this possibility is very high. This time, neither of them wanted to talk. She put away her Taoist card phone and regretted not asking about the news here in detail when Shenroi was not around. But she thought again, if she hadn't experienced this matter personally, she would never ask her master whether the continent under her feet was moving. Because this question sounds stupid, it is a question that has never appeared in her mind for more than 20 years. Chapter 137, Continent. Yang Zhao thought for a long time, but couldn't figure out why the continent was moving. Not long ago, he heard from Qin's old shark and Zhongsheng that not only the continent was moving, but also Qin's old shark's underwater territory could be attached to the continent and move with the continent. His territory had not moved for hundreds of years. This year, he suddenly moved, which attracted Zhongsheng and others to visit him, and more than one group of people came. But the old shark refused to change it because he had the book contract in hand. I don't know if the two sides will fight after Yang Zhao leaves. And Yang Zhao had some guesses in his heart that the reason why Qin's old shark did this year was because of her own master Shenroi. Of course, these are just guesses, and there is no evidence. Seeing that it was getting late, Yang Zhao went downstairs to the hall and ordered half a table of dishes to eat. Unfortunately, the half table of dishes that were obviously delicious now tasted a bit tasteless. She slept in the inn, and the next day she started running to major bookstores, trying to find a book that could introduce this situation. Finally, she found two vague explanations in a book called Shanhei Zhi. The general meaning of these two sentences is that a long time ago, there was an invasion of foreign demons here, and in order to resist the foreign demons, the people broke the earth. There was a god who couldn't bear the suffering of the people, so he carried them on his back and wandered around on the sea. He carried the people of a continent on his back. This statement is a bit exaggerated. The first half of the story may be true. The people here broke the earth to resist the foreign demons. But it should be false that there are gods carrying so many people on their backs, otherwise it will challenge her worldview. After she flipped through the book for 2 days, she finally calmed down slowly. Whether this continent will move or not, no matter how it moves, it has no big impact on Yang Zhao now. Her primary task now is to practice and publish interesting videos to accumulate incense, and other things have to take a step back. Speaking of videos, Yang Zhao remembered that she recorded a video when she went out to sea to visit the old shark named Qin that day, but she forgot about it because her mind was not on this aspect these days. She returned to the inn and started charging her phone with a power bank, then edited the video and posted it online. This time, she not only edited in the part where the old shark transformed, but also edited in Zhongsheng. Although Zhongsheng only took up a few tens of seconds in the video, based on the nature of the posts on the internet, where people like to watch faces, she should be able to gain a lot of fans this time. With a happy mood, Yang Zhao checked out of the room and found a caravan going to Linjing for business. She paid a few taels of silver, rented a car, and went to Linjing with them. There were many people renting cars from them. Mainly because she had never been to Linjing, she was afraid that she would get lost halfway in this unfamiliar place. On the day of departure, Yang Zhao set off early and arrived at the caravan. At this time, they had already put all the goods on the animal cart and sorted them out. The remaining few large carriages were reserved for people. Because Yang Zhao didn't want to squeeze in the same carriage with others, he asked for a car alone. The young man next to her saw her arrive, checked the token in her hand, and led her to one of the carriages with a smile. The carriage looked very spacious, with 2 layers of wooden boards on top, and bedding on top of the wooden boards, which looked very clean. People can sit, or lie down to rest. Are you satisfied with the look, guest? You can tell me, if you have any needs. That's good. I'll go up first, and won't bother you anymore. The young man watched her get on the car and left tactfully. Yang Zhao got into the car, reached out and took out a small disinfectant from his arms, and disinfected the bedding inside and out. These things are public supplies, and their cleanliness cannot be guaranteed. After half an incense stick of time, the convoy left the city in a lively manner. In the past, when renting a car in Huanglangang, these animal carts were slow, and Yang Zhao thought that these big guys were too slow to move. Who knew that, as soon as these big guys left the city, they began to run along the main road, and their speed was obviously many times faster. Although the animal cart was moving very fast, the carriage was very stable. Yang Zhao took a nap in the middle, and did not feel any bumps. She searched around, and found an anti-bumping magic circle in the carriage. While waiting for the caravan to rest at night, Yang Zhao took out her mobile phone, and found that these big guys could drag the car for about 400 miles in a day. It seems that these big guys have both speed and endurance, and they are worthy of being species in the world of cultivation. After a night's rest, the caravan set off at dawn the next day. The caravan's goal was very clear. Except for a few cars that separated from them halfway, they did not stop in the cities they passed by. Therefore, after only 7 or 8 days, the entire caravan arrived in Lianjing. Chapter 138, Butter Tea. It was already afternoon when the caravan arrived at Lianjing. The weather was gloomy and there was a dense light snow. The tall city wall stretched all the way to the distance, with no end in sight. There were 8 gates of different sizes under the city wall, and 8 huge gatehouses outside the city gates. Even though it was snowing lightly, the bustling water mist sprayed out from the gatehouse, covering the endless stream of people under the gatehouse. Yang Zhao adjusted the angle of the mobile phone in his backpack, and began to shoot the shocking scene in front of him. Although all 8 gates were open, there were too many people entering and leaving the city. Yang Zhao and his caravan waited in line for a long time before they could enter the city gate. Lianjing was different from Huanglangang. The streets here were very wide and looked like they could accommodate 8 animal carts running side by side. The vehicles were in the middle of the road and the pedestrians were on both sides. There were no stalls selling things on the street. There were shops with 3 or 4 floors along the street, with various signs hanging on them. The lights were on in the shops, and customers were coming in and out, a prosperous scene. Yang Zhao paid the remaining money to the caravan, and began to stroll slowly along the street with the lights on both sides. She went in to take a look at what she was interested in, and skipped those that were not interested. After wandering around for half a day, she finally found an inn to settle down. She ordered some special dishes from the unfamiliar menu, and asked the waiter to bring them up. If the food in Huanglangang is mainly salty and fresh, then the signature dishes here are characterized by mellow and fragrant. It was a bit novel for her who had eaten Huanglangang food for several months. After eating, she lay on the bed and began to edit today's video and post it online. After she was done, she casually flipped through her homepage information and found that she had gained nearly 50,000 followers since the last time she saw it. Clicking into the comment section of the last video, there were thousands of messages left on it, and a group of face dogs were partying on it. Meow meow meow, who is that handsome guy? Please tell me, who is that handsome guy? Lick lick lick, my screen is so dirty, I'm out of butter tea. */*, cover your face. Blogger, if you have the ability to post handsome guys, you have the ability to tell us his name. Does anyone know the name of this handsome guy? If you know, please kick me to death. Blogger, other bloggers stole your video. The tens of seconds of male god videos they edited have received millions of likes. Why are you, the original blogger, not popular? Because of this handsome guy, I found the original video with great difficulty. I can only say that you are really a bit unpopular, blogger. The above old fans all know that this account hides a big secret and is severely restricted. It is not easy for you to find this account. The above organization rules on a large platform don't say these words. Be careful of being kicked out. I just want to ask who else? With this appearance, I just feel ashamed when I see him. I'm a man. This is the feeling of the immortal master. Can all the immortal hero dramas and the inner fish be like this? It seems that everyone is looking at the handsome guy. Am I the only one who thinks that the big shark has turned into an old man? Is it very majestic? That big shark really killed me. It feels like it ate a lot of people. I want to exchange secret codes. Is anyone accepting it? The above person clicks on my avatar to chat privately and join the group. *KNYONE who asks you to transfer money is a RLAR asterisk. The fourth group of the Cultivation War Deception Bureau is not full yet. This group mainly recruits Taoist friends who can speak Portuguese. If you are interested, click on the avatar to chat privately. *KNYONE who asks you to transfer money is a RLAR asterisk. The snow had not stopped early the next morning. Yang Zhao had breakfast and started to go out for a stroll. This time she focused on the pharmacy, wanting to ask if there were any elixirs mentioned on Shenruo's list. But she searched 4 or 5 stores and found nothing. When she arrived at the last store, Yang Zhao dragged the second brother who sent him out and stuffed half a teal of silver into him, and then he got the truth. Guessed, nutritious pills are used to increase your cultivation. These are specially made. You need to find a pill maker to place an order. Our pharmacy can't afford to sell these things. Yang Zhao took out another half deal of silver and stuffed it into his hand. Little second brother, do you know where to find a pill maker? The little second brother took the silver with a smile. Alchemists generally don't contact people privately. They will list their names in major spiritual goods shops. There are more than 10 such shops in Lijiang. The most famous ones are Xinglao and Bizhou United Chamber of Commerce. After thanking the little second brother, Yang Zhao rented a beast cart and began to look for Xinglao. The driver was a warm-hearted person. He started chatting with her as soon as she got on the beast cart. Girl, from your accent, you are from another place. I think you are from Huanglang. Yang Zhao, yes, you have just been in Lijiang for a few days. Hey, I can tell from your accent. You came here to join the excitement of Junzhao Lake this time. Junzhao Lake is lively? Yang Zhao, you are wrong. I came here to seek refuge with my relatives and friends. I have never heard of Junzhao Lake. The taxi owner was full of excitement. Oh, you don't know about Junzhao Lake yet? Then I have to tell you about it. It seems that all taxi drivers in the world love gossip. Now even the beast cart drivers in the cultivation world are not immune. They gossip while driving the car and popularize Junzhao Lake clearly. Junzhao Lake is 26 miles north of Lijiang City and covers an area of several thousand hectares. According to the taxi owner, this lake is the place where the 8 directions gather key in the center of the world's water veins. Anyway, it is a very awesome place. Such an awesome place naturally has a special purpose. It is a nursery for big guys. Some races have difficulty in giving birth, have few offspring, and are restricted by the laws of nature, and are prone to premature death. Therefore, many big guys will soak their unborn offspring or young offspring in Junzhao Lake. However, Junzhao Lake is a private territory. Its owner stipulates that every 5 years is a cycle, and the lake only accepts 27 cubs, and they will be kicked out when the time comes. Now is the end of the 5-year cycle, and people from all walks of life have arrived, so Junzhao Lake has been particularly lively these days. The car owner was still talking, but Yang Zhao had already arrived, so he could only force his summary statement. You can see a lot of big people in Junzhao Lake these days, so everyone likes to run there. Yang Zhao summarized it. That is, go to the gate of the bilingual kindergarten to see sports cars. She paid and got off the car, and when she looked up, she saw the huge plaque of Xinglao. Yang Zhao looked around, and this building had the largest area and the most luxurious exterior decoration. This building has more than 10 floors, with a tall and wide facade, and people come and go. This seems to be similar to a department store. The first floor sells various spiritual plants. Some are dried, some are potted, some are fresh, and some are dried. Each one has a small flower on the counter, and the customer selects it and then takes it from the warehouse. She found a less busy clerk to ask how to find an alchemist. Guessed, if you want to find an alchemist, you have to go to the 5th floor. You can go directly up. There are people to receive you inside. The clerk pointed to the stairs next to him. Yang Zhao thanked them and came to the 5th floor. There were no goods on the counter on the 5th floor, only wooden signs with names on the 4 walls. As soon as Yang Zhao entered, a waiter came to greet her. Guest, do you want to find an alchemist? Yang Zhao nodded. Are there any rules for finding an alchemist? The waiter led her to a table and chair and sat down. First, both parties must be willing. That is to say, you can specify the alchemist, but whether the alchemist accepts your order is his own will. We cannot force him. Second, you have to provide the raw materials for making the elixir yourself. The alchemist is only responsible for making the elixir, and he only charges the money for making the elixir. We, Xinglao, do not charge an agency fee. Third, there is a probability of failure in alchemy. We have the detailed information of the alchemist here. You have to carefully select, and we will help you contact them, so you can't trouble the alchemist if you fail in alchemy. Fourth, if you want to use the recipe in the hands of the alchemist, you have to pay an extra fee. If you provide the recipe yourself, the alchemist can sign a written contract with you to keep it confidential. Yang Zhao nodded to show that he understood. Then how do I choose an alchemist? The clerk pointed to the densely packed wooden signs on the wall. You can tell us your requirements and we will recommend a few to you. If you want to find one yourself, see the wooden signs on the wall. If you stare at a wooden sign for a while, the sign will show what kind of elixir the alchemist is good at making, and the probability of success in the past. Yang Zhao tried it, and sure enough, as long as he stared at a wooden sign for 4 or 5 seconds, the detailed information of the elixir would appear in front of him. This seemed to be an illusion. I want to make a batch of elixirs, to improve my foundation building period. I have my own elixir formula. Please recommend a few to me. The clerk pondered for a while, and clicked his hands continuously. One by one, golden circles floated in the air, and then quickly flew forward, and put on the wooden signs hanging on the wall. 8 names on the wall lit up with golden circles. You can take a closer look at these 8 alchemists. If you are not satisfied, I will recommend others to you. Thank you, I'll take a look later. Yang Zhao used all his eyesight to check the information of the circled alchemists from left to right. The first one is good at refining foundation building elixirs, and is good at handling spiritual plant-based elixir or materials. The success rate of spiritual plants is 80%, metal and stone is 60%, and spiritual objects is 70%. The alchemist does not want to kill, so don't send living things. The second one is good at refining foundation building elixirs, good at miscellaneous elixirs, and good at handling spiritual objects. The alchemist can handle it himself. The success rate is 70% to 80% of spiritual plants, 70% to 80% of metal and stone, and 90% of spiritual objects. The third one is good at refining foundation building elixirs. The fourth one is good at refining. The 8th one is good at. Yang Zhao read all the information in the gold circle, turned around and asked the guy who was accompanying her, "Can I choose a few more people?" The clerk smiled sincerely. "Of course, you can choose any number you want." Yang Zhao nodded. "I choose Zhang Shishan, Sulin, Zixiaoxio, and Zheng Yuzhang." The clerk took out a stack of paper and pen. "Sir, you can write out half of the recipe. We will send this half of the recipe to the alchemist of your choice, and let them decide for themselves whether they can take this order." Yang Zhao took the pen and started writing on the table. She did not just copy the first half of the list, but jumped to select a few paragraphs from the list and wrote them down. The clerk took it and took a look, then reached out and took out a small metal block from his arms and tapped twice at the half of the recipe. Then he took out a blank new paper, hung the small metal block above the new paper, and finally the blank new paper showed ink, which was the half of the recipe written by Yang Zhao. 1 chapter every few days, don't wait, thank you. Chapter 139, but the waiter wrote the names of the alchemists on the half-page prescriptions one by one and arranged them. Then he flicked the papers lightly, and the papers gradually became transparent until they disappeared. "Please wait a moment, sir. There will be a reply in a moment." The waiter asked someone to bring a pot of tea and 2 plates of snacks, and chatted with Yang Zhao while eating. In less than half a cup of tea, a black-backed and blue-bellied bird flew to their table. The waiter smiled and pointed at the bird. "Here it comes." The bird walked half a circle on the table with a proud look, opened its tender yellow beak, and a crisp child's voice came into the ears. "Humph, I knew that this young master is the fastest. Hey, silly bird over there, our master has accepted your order." After saying that, its tender yellow beak pecked the table lightly, and half a prescription appeared out of thin air, with the name of the alchemist written on it, Yang Zhao. The waiter looked a little embarrassed, and he took the bird into his palm and covered it. "Hey, please don't blame me, customer. This black-backed kite has just been out of the eggshell for a short time and can't speak, but the alchemist Yang Zhao is a first-class alchemy master, and is well received here. That means that the bird is still young. Don't bother with it. The alchemist is still a good person." In fact, Yang Zhao was not angry. On the contrary, she was very curious. It was mainly because it was the first time she saw a bird that could speak in real life, so she didn't care much about it cursing. Just like when everyone faces a parrot full of swear words, the reaction is more laughter and novelty, rather than pluck the feathers and roast it to eat. But she couldn't put her thoughts on the surface, so she could only nod calmly. But the black-backed kite was angry, and kept struggling in the waiter's palm. It finally arched out its tender yellow mouth, and the arrogant child's voice rang again. "Let go, you silly bird. I tell you, I'm not easy to bully. If you don't let go, I'll grab your hand." The man was so scared by the sentence, that he loosened his hands. The black-backed shag flew up instantly, cursing. "You silly bird, you have the guts to catch me, bah." It arrogantly circled over the man's head quickly, and then rushed out like an arrow. The man's smile could no longer be maintained. He had half of the spell in his hand. Yang Zhao saw that it looked familiar. He recalled that this was the starting hand gesture of the fireball spell. Are you okay?" The man dispersed the spell in his hand and smiled again. Haha, it's okay, customer. Are you satisfied with this alchemist? If you are satisfied, you can write down the pill formula in secret, and you must also prepare the consumables for making the pill. Yang Zhao turned his head and stared at the wooden sign for a long time, nodded, and decided on the alchemist Yang Zhao. Then the waiter took Yang Zhao to a quiet room, prepared a separate piece of paper and pen, and took out a written contract signed with Yang Zhao's name and a seal. "Just write the prescription here. After you finish writing, Master Zheng will naturally receive it. Take this written contract and compare the notes and spiritual power with the half prescription or the sign on the wall." Yang Zhao, won't the master come to sign the contract with me in person? The waiter's face was still smiling. "Don't worry, sir. This is the rule in Linjing. In order to ensure the safety of the master, they will not show up casually. They all sign their names and leave their spiritual power on the contract." Yang Zhao nodded, indicating that he accepted his explanation. The waiter pointed to a small bell on the table and said, "If you have finished writing, just shake this bell." Then he smiled and left the quiet room and closed the door from the outside. After watching the clerk go out, Yang Zhao first carefully looked at the book contract and then checked the spiritual power of both parties with the half of the prescription. There was no mistake on both sides. Then she put down the book contract and picked up the pen to write the prescription on the table. Some things cannot be studied in detail. Now her main business is to improve her cultivation. But after writing the first word, she discovered the magic of this paper and pen, because as soon as she wrote a complete word, the word disappeared as a whole. Not to mention the black ink on the paper, there is not even a watermark on it. This is a good thing. Yang Zhao was a little greedy. This thing should be double-sided, and the other side is in the hands of the alchemist. This looks a bit like chatting on a mobile phone. The difference is that one is on an electronic device and the other is on paper and pen. When she finished writing the prescription, the paper was still as smooth as new. Then she signed the book contract, and the book contract was burned inch by inch, and a red line appeared on her wrist. After doing all this, Yang Zhao shook the small bell next to her, and soon the door was opened from the outside, and the clerk walked in. "Now that you have written, you can prepare the consumables for refining pills. If you don't want to go out, you can buy them in our Xinglao." If you have other merchants you like, you can ask them to deliver the goods now. Xinglao is quite good at doing business. Although they don't charge intermediary fees between customers and alchemists, they use alchemists as traffic signs to sell consumables for various pills, thus making a lot of money. Where is Yang Zhao's favorite merchant? She can only leave the 5th floor and start strolling around Xinglao shopping. Chapter 140. Pill Success. While walking around Xinglao, Yang Zhao found that it was not easy to buy medicine refining consumables. It was probably because the preparation of some consumables did not match. For example, the recipe of medicinal material required vinegar fumigation, but the medicinal material in Xinglao was pure wine. Some medicinal materials required tender branches, but the medicinal material in Xinglao only had dry bark. Yang Zhao sucked her teeth. There were dozens of consumables for a medicinal pill, and she could not collect them all by herself at once. She could only ask for help from the clerks in the store, who had been contacting her. Fortunately, this situation was very common among the clerks, and they gave her an idea without thinking too much. Because of the special nature of the four-way land in this world, many cultivators would encounter the situation where medicinal materials were difficult to collect when refining pills. Generally, in this case, the cultivators would pay more money to issue a task to collect alchemy consumables in Xinglao. Afterwards, Yang Zhao paid Xinglao an agency fee and posted a task to collect alchemy consumables in Xinglao. The quantity of each consumable was the same to prevent outsiders from knowing the proportion of his alchemy consumables. Of course, the price was also 3 points higher than the market price. It was true that everyone loved money, and the 3 points of profit attracted many people. Within 2 days, Yang Zhao had gathered all the medicinal materials on the prescription, and a total of more than 1,300 taels of silver were spent. After gathering everything, Yang Zhao came to Xinglao to inform the alchemist Shen Shanking. After a while, she saw the black-backed kite with a yellow beak and a blue belly again. Although this black-backed kite is small, it is always arrogant. It flew to the table in front of Yang Zhao and held its head high and turned around the table arrogantly. My master said that according to the market price in Lianjing, he charges 5 taels of silver for 1 pill, and the deposit is 200 taels of silver, and the pill yield rate is guaranteed to be more than 60%. Yang Zhao had already heard about this price from the guys in Xinglao, so he was not surprised. Then he signed the contract for the silver for the pill in front of Blackback Harrier. Then, under Blackback Harrier's eyes, he put the pill refining materials one by one into the Kyankan bag provided by Xinglao. Yang Zhao handed the Kyankan bag filled with pill refining materials to Blackback Harrier. These are the materials for 100 pills. The extra pill refining materials can be disposed of by Master Zhengdan at will. Blackback Harrier jumped onto the Kyankan bag and stomped his tender yellow claws. Don't worry, silly bird. You weren't even born when my master started to make the elixir. You don't need to explain this matter. Who are you looking down on? The waiter standing next to him looked at Yang Zhao with embarrassment on his face. Guessed, don't bother with this black-backed hawk. The black-backed hawk was talking back to the sky, the earth and the air. When the waiter said such slanderous words to it, it opened its mouth and retorted. Hey, you silly bird, what do you mean by not bothering with me? Do you think I'm easy to mess with? The waiter quickly grabbed the black-backed hawk's tender yellow beak and stopped the bird from spitting. But Yang Zhao didn't know what expression he had on his face. He simply looked at the black-backed hawk with a stern face. The bird struggled unwillingly, and the waiter quickly called 2 guards from Xinglao to come over and let the guards follow the black-backed hawk and leave Xinglao with the Kyankan bag. Yang Zhao took advantage of this gap to rent a 2-story courtyard in Lianjing and moved out of the inn to live in. She felt a little restrained in doing anything in the inn, so it was better to rent a small courtyard by herself, quiet and comfortable. After Yang Zhao had been eating and drinking in Lianjing for 8 or 9 days, she received a message from Xinglao telling her that the elixir had been refined and asked her to go to the 1st floor. She came to Xinglao happily, and the waiter who had been contacting her was already waiting for Yang Zhao at the door. The two greeted each other first, and the waiter led her to a quiet room, where the black-backed harrier was already waiting on the table. Finally, under the gaze of the two, the Kyankan bag under his feet was released. There are a total of 79 elixirs in it, and you can test them at will. Without waiting for Yang Zhao to speak, the waiter pushed a machine from the corner of the quiet room, and then began to check the efficacy of the elixirs in the Kyankan bag one by one on the machine. There was no need for Yang Zhao to check the efficacy of the medicine himself. After the pills were checked, they were put into 8 small porcelain bottles by the Xinglao staff. All the pills are qualified, he said, and handed the small porcelain bottles to Yang Zhao. She took the small porcelain bottles and stuffed them into her Kyankan bag, took out the silver from the Kyankan bag, and gave the remaining 195 taels of silver to the black-backed harrier. The black-backed harrier excitedly stepped on the silver and jumped around. Since you, a silly bird, paid so happily, next time you want to make pills again. The staff next to him had been on guard against the black-backed harrier's mouth, and made a seal with both hands, to fix it in place. The customer does not need to pay attention to this little thing. If you need to make pills next time, you can come to Xinglao at any time. Yang Zhao looked at the black-backed harrier, which was fixed in place, but had fire in its eyes, and couldn't help laughing. Next time I make pills, I will definitely come to Xinglao to find you. Then, she took the pills and left. She hurried back to her own courtyard to try the pill. Update as normal tomorrow. Chapter 141. The first group of immortal cultivators. Yang Zhao returned to the small courtyard she rented, took out a pill, and compared it with the recipe left by Shenryu. She carefully compared it from color to smell, and only dared to eat it after confirming that it was exactly the same as the finished product written on the recipe. Don't blame her for being careful. In fact, she has no experience in pills, and her master Shenryu is not with her. Moreover, she and the alchemist have never met during the whole process of refining the pill, and she knows nothing about the process of refining the pill, so she always has doubts about this pill in her heart. Pills are something to be taken orally. If there is a little mistake, who can Yang Zhao go to for justice? But she regretted it as soon as she ate it. She was only concerned with testing the pill, but she didn't make any mental preparations when taking the pill. When her meridians all over her body felt like they were burning with pain, she regretted it in her heart. Before the 100-day foundation building, she had experienced the medicinal soup prescribed by Shenryu. How many days had she spent with sweat and tears? She was careless this time. It seems that she has been a little slack recently, and this loss is not unfair. At first, it was just the burning pain in the meridians. Slowly, the fire in the meridians burned more and more vigorously, burning the skin, flesh, and bones red, and the brain was boiling. What was even more chilling was that no matter whether it was the decoction or the pill produced by Shenryu, people would not lose consciousness, no matter how painful it was after taking it, which made her unable to faint, even if she wanted to. The whole process of torture was known to her, without any discount. However, the benefits were also visible to the naked eye. After taking a pill on the first day, she felt that her meridians were much wider the next day. Every time she practiced the 3 pure ones and the true Yang meridian, she absorbed more spiritual power than before. Shenryu's pills all expressed the same meaning, that if you want to be noble in front of others, you must suffer behind others. From then on, she lived a life that wanted to go to the Hades Palace every day. The first group of immortal cultivation in Yunnan Temple was originally called Technical Expansion Exchange Group. This group was originally founded by a few internet tycoons in order to dig deep into Yang Zhao's videos, learn from the techniques in them, and make a little money. But these guys were very skilled. The more they dug up the videos, the faster their hearts beat, and the less they believed their eyes. A few people in the group tested each other and pulled in some senior brothers and junior brothers to dig deeper together. As a result, everyone agreed to change the group name to Yunnan Temple Immortal Cultivation First Group. Since then, the members of this group began to dig up all of Yang Zhao's immortal cultivation videos frame by frame. All the foreign characters that appeared in them, such as the plaques hanging on the streets, the signs written by the merchants, the gun skills and spells that Yang Zhao practiced, and even the characters that appeared in the videos were summarized in detail. All the summaries were posted in the group announcement. If there were any errors, anyone in the group could point them out and make changes. For some difficult choices, they would write down several opinions of everyone in the group, in order to check them one by one later. There was even a big guy who was good at online tracking who had done a human flesh search on Yang Zhao. After hitting a big nail, he disappeared directly on the internet, and his avatar in the group remained dim. From then on, the human flesh search for Yang Zhao could only be communicated through glances, and the disappearing person became a taboo in the group, for fear of causing misunderstandings. Since some things were difficult to dig up, they changed their thinking. This time they started with national policies and social news, analyzing the pros and cons one by one, in order to gain greater advantages in the near future. Delusion of longevity. There has been some unrest among medical students these days. Has everyone known about it? First disciple of cultivation. How could I not know? There's an uproar on the internet. Many students studying Western medicine or veterinary medicine are complaining that they have to learn acupuncture as their main subject, and if they don't pass the exam, they won't be allowed to graduate. Carrot carrot. It seems that we need to add acupuncture to our group information. Cultivation newbie. Not just acupuncture, but also the meridians need to be familiar. Stealing the sky and changing the day. We have anticipated this, but we have more theoretical knowledge. I was thinking about finding an old Chinese doctor and spending money to learn it first. Delusion of longevity. I guess it will be difficult. I found a very famous old Chinese doctor some time ago, but the hospital said that he went for further studies at the age of 80. I'm shocked. Group leader, I want to become your apprentice. Pat on the head. It seems that we still have an advantage in college. Stealing the sky and changing the day. I'm in college, but I majored in animal husbandry, so I don't feel that there is any advantage. Cheng Yi studied medicine. I have uploaded the contents of the acupuncture textbook that our school has distributed to the group announcement, and the knowledge of meridians and acupoints involved in it is also very complete. Ziasen Zhao. Thank you for your selfless dedication, Master Yi. Zion Wangling. Thank you, Master Yi. Cheng Yi studied medicine. Zion Wangling. Didn't you say yesterday that you found a big news? You need to study it carefully for a few days. Why are you bubbling up now? Zion Wangling. Because I don't need to study it. I found that we gathered together for a meeting these days. I thought there would be some secrets. Group leader, I want to become a disciple. Ha 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 ha. A group of people laughed, and the members of the group turned into hatter monsters. But not long after asterisk pressed the pause button for this behavior. Chapter 142. Urgent matter. The first group of immortal cultivators in Yunyang Temple. Delusion of immortality. I found out the address of the sect. HMM. I might go 40. I'm giving you guys a heads up. Sect address equals Yunyang Temple address. Cultivation novice. Can I go there in my physical body? The order of the former king, Master Cheng Sheng v5. B equals. If you become rich and powerful, don't forget each other. Delusion of immortality. At CULTIVATION novice. You can't go. At THE order of the former king. I'm not rich and powerful yet. Chengai medical student. Fuck. Master Cheng Sheng. Do you mean to go 40 on purpose? Master, the most difficult thing now is that no one can contact Yang Zhao of Yunyang Temple. We are guarding the treasure, but can't open the door. So Master Cheng Sheng's meaning is delusion of immortality, so I want to break the wall and see. He didn't say how to do it, and everyone naturally changed the topic. Group leader, I want to become your disciple. I dug into the document that Ziasen Zhao mentioned about primary school students learning meridian acupoints, and found that it also strengthens physical exercise and ideological and moral education, and recommends students to practice long distance running and rock climbing. Does this mean that we have to follow suit? Zion Wangling. Stop. What's the difference between asking me to exercise and killing me? Cheng Yi studies medicine. It's the same for me. I can't even memorize all the books. How can I have time to practice sports? I don't even want to participate in military training. Ziasen Zhao. Although I have watched all of Yang Zhao's cultivation videos, and I also want to cultivate immortals very much, I'm really a otaku no way. Group leader, I want to become your disciple, Seeing blogger Yang Zhao being beaten so badly by a small wooden block in the video, and falling so painfully when practicing flying, I knew that cultivating immortals is not a comfortable thing. Zhiazhen's I obey. Alas, if you want to seek the path to immortality, how can you not suffer? Tao Shinhu and Ri, I don't envy anything else. I just covet that big leopard. It's the legendary monster. If I had one, I wouldn't have to worry about my graduation thesis. Cultivation novice, you have an arrow vision. That dragon is so handsome. It will be a national treasure if we bring it back. Tao Shinhu and Ri, that dragon looks dead, no matter how you look at it, but the big leopard is alive. My major in animal husbandry is only about living things, not dead things. In a certain coordination base of traditional Chinese medicine, a young man stood in the office with red eyes. Leader, I want to sign up my child for Kame. The middle-aged man behind the desk was stunned, with some unkindness in his eyes. Your child? Zhiao, although you are your child's father, you can't use your child's life to participate in this kind of experiment. This is a big problem in your thinking. I will pretend that I didn't hear it today. You can get out. The young man couldn't hold back the tears in his eyes. Leader, I'm not after him to become an immortal or something. I just found out when my wife talked to me on the phone a few days ago that the child was diagnosed with neuroblastoma a month ago. It's malignant and the disease is progressing very quickly. It's been less than a month since the diagnosis, and it has affected his spontaneous breathing. Leader, I really can't do anything. After hearing what he said, the middle-aged man looked a little reluctant. Zhiao, you know the risks of opening the pulse. There are still several adults in our base lying in bed and can't wake up. The middle-aged man knocked on the table and said, although opening the pulse can improve the physical fitness of the person whose pulse is opened, we haven't had time to study whether it has a good effect on the disease. The risk is too great. Let me help you contact some experts in this field, because I have some connections outside. My wife also graduated from the medical university. My wife has shamelessly contacted well-known professors from both of our schools. The answer they gave was to enhance the child's physical fitness, at least so that he can withstand radiotherapy and chemotherapy. Otherwise, how can I bear to let him take such a risk? The young man squatted on the ground and buried his face in his hands. He is only 3 months old. I'm irresponsible as a father. He has never looked at me since he was born. I can't watch him die. Even if there is a glimmer of hope, I will take him to try. The leader quickly helped him up, patted him on the back gently, and comforted him. Hey, here, Zhiao, I will give you a few days off. You go home to see the child first. If you really insist, I will report this to your superiors. Thank you leader. The wind and snow in Lijiang have been getting heavier in recent days. Because of the side effects of the elixir these days, Yang Zhao didn't want to do anything except eating and practicing. But a few days later, she received a contact from Jiuo Fuminqiang, who wanted her to buy a more advanced silver needle for opening the meridians. Jiuo Fuminqiang, we want to open the meridians of a child, but Uncle Gongsun means that the silver needles we provide do not meet the requirements of opening the meridians of that child. At least the silver needles must meet the standards of low-level magic weapons. As soon as he said this, Yang Zhao knew that there must be something wrong with this child. Because in Kangcheng and Huanglangang, Yang Zhao had opened the meridians of local children, and the silver needles he used were all ordinary silver needles. He only played an introduction role, and adding some silver crystal meteorite ore was already the top configuration. Yang Zhao, what are the specific requirements? Jiuo Fuminqiang, the child's body is extremely weak, and the silver needles need to be extremely stable in the process of guiding the energy of the veins and leaves, and the control of the energy flow must be extremely refined. Yang Zhao, are you anxious? Jiuo Fuminqiang, the sooner the better. To be honest with you, this child can't hold on for long. Yang Zhao, okay, wait, I'll go now. Sorry, I drank yesterday and didn't react. I only updated one chapter. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143, Heavy Snow. Guo Fuminqiang then sent the child's detailed information, including the child's weight, height, disease progression, physical condition, daily meals, etc. Yang Zhao copied down all the information about the child and put it in his arms. Then he opened the door curtain and rushed into the ice and snow. Now the snowstorm in Lijiang is in full swing, with heavy snow mixed with strong winds, making it hard for people to open their eyes. There are few pedestrians and few vehicles on the street. Braving the wind and snow, Yang Zhao found a large pulse opening hall and asked the other party if there are any suitable pulse opening silver needles. A middle-aged man in a brown cotton coat came out of the pulse opening hall to greet her. "Guest, we don't sell silver needles. If you really want to buy magic weapon quality pulse opening silver needles, you can go to the weapon refiner." Yang Zhao had to reveal the news that the child was seriously ill to him. "I also know that it is a bit embarrassing to ask you to buy Kame silver needles, but it takes too much time to find a weapon refiner to refine a set, and my child may not be able to wait that long." The middle-aged man asked, "How old is the child?" Yang Zhao, 3 months. The middle-aged man looked a little embarrassed. "To be honest, we do have a few sets of magic weapon level silver needles, but I don't know if they can be used for that child. Boss, please sit here. Wait a minute, I will go and ask my master to take a look." The middle-aged man asked a waiter to make a seat for Yang Zhao and serve tea, and he turned around and went upstairs to invite people. In less than half a cup of tea, an old man with white hair and beard was led down the stairs by the middle-aged man. The old man looked up at the wind and snow outside, and then looked at Yang Zhao's summer clothes, and guessed her cultivation. "I heard that the customer wants to buy Kame silver needles from me." Yang Zhao quickly stood up. "Yes, please help me, old man." The old man waved his hand and sat down with Yang Zhao. The middle-aged man turned around and stood behind the old man. "A set of silver needles can save a child's life. How can I be stingy? But although I have 3 sets of magic level meridian opening silver needles, I don't know if they can be used with this child." Yang Zhao took out the paper with the child's detailed information from his arms and handed it to the old man with both hands. The old man took the paper and looked at it carefully. The more he looked, the tighter his brows frowned. In the end, his expression was solemn and his lips were slightly pursed. "Sir, I have no choice but to disappoint you. The child's condition is too critical and his body is so weak. The 3 sets of magic grade meridian opening silver needles in my hand are still too heavy a burden for the child." Yang Zhao looked disappointed and stood up to say goodbye. "Please excuse me, old sir, I will go look for it in another meridian opening shop." The old man stretched out his hand to stop her. "Alas, sir, don't worry. I know someone who has 7 sets of magic grade meridian opening silver needles. 2 of them are of particularly high grade, and it is difficult for ordinary people to borrow them. I can write you a note that may be of some help to you. You can take the note directly to Hunshan Hall later." Yang Zhao thanked him gratefully. "Thank you for your help, old sir. It's all for the child. It's just a handy thing for me." The middle-aged man standing behind the old man took the paper and ink with a discerning eye. The old man swiftly wrote a note, wrote the name of the whereabouts, and handed it to Yang Zhao. "Go quickly, my friend. The snow is getting stronger and stronger. If you go too late, I'm afraid Hunshan Hall will close, and you'll have to wait for another day." Yang Zhao took the note and folded it carefully and put it in her arms. She took the child's information and asked for the detailed address of Hunshan Hall before bidding farewell to the 2 and heading to Hunshan Hall. The snow outside was indeed stronger. She used one hand to cast a wind spell to block the snow around her. Then she used the light body technique and ran quickly on the street. Flying was not allowed in Lijiang City, so she could only use the light body technique to increase her speed. Fortunately, there were few people on this street, and no one blocked Yang Zhao's way, so she could run very fast. But Lijiang was very large, and she ran for half an incense stick before reaching her destination. When she arrived at the door of Hunshan Hall, there was no one 1 meter away under the heavy snow. Due to the weather, the young man in Hunshan Hall was planning to close a store. "Brother, wait until the store is closed. I have something to discuss with your store." The clerk invited her into the room, took the note she handed over and read it, then took the note and asked an old lady in a silver red flowered jacket to come out. "Sir, do you want to borrow my meridian opening silver needles?" It seems that the old lady only intends to lend, not sell. Yang Zhao, that's right. My child is weak and in critical condition. He can't wait for the time for the weapon refiner to practice, so I shamelessly come to ask you. If you have any request, you can tell me directly. I will never say anything. The old lady was a smiling person. What's there to say? The child's life is the most important. Tell me about the child's situation. Yang Zhao handed the information he had collected in his arms to the old lady. The old lady frowned after reading it. "Sir, I'm not trying to refuse. It's really that the meridian opening silver needles in my hand don't have the right symptoms. Let me write a note and you go to my uncle to have a look." Yang Zhao took the note gratefully and stepped into Fengchuan again. In this way, Yang Zhao ran back and forth in the city in a cloak in the snow for a long time. When it was almost dark, he found a young girl for help and finally had some hope. Chapter 144, Silver Needle for Opening Meridians. The young girl pondered over the child's medical list for a long time and finally nodded. "The silver needles I have here can really be used by this child, but, Yang Zhao, if you have any difficulties, just tell me." The young girl returned the list to her. "Are you at the foundation building stage now?" Yang Zhao nodded and had a rough guess in his mind. It seems that this woman doesn't want the silver. Hearing the answer she wanted, the young girl smiled. "I wonder if the senior knows about Yang Zhao Lake? I have heard of it, but I don't know the details." The young girl asked Yang Zhao to sit down and began to explain the Yang Zhao Lake to him in detail. "The reason is that this world is above the four-way land. Since it is a four-way land, it is inevitable that it will become a four-way war land due to the turmoil of war. Because there have been several invasion wars here, many places have been destroyed, and many unique races in this world have lost their places to survive. That's why Yang Zhao Lake is sought after by the big guys, because it is really hard to find a place to raise children. Although the area of Yang Zhao Lake is not small, it is still too small for those big guys who have a sense of territory. This means that the cubs in Yang Zhao Lake will not be taken care of by their parents in these 5 years. Otherwise, these big guys will have to fight. So every 5 years, after the new batch of cubs move in, the big guy's parents will choose a nanny for him to study with. Don't underestimate the positions of nanny and study with. This is equivalent to half a wet nurse. Staying with the cubs for 5 years can enhance their feelings. For those who have no connections, no background, and no talent, it is a great opportunity. After all, in the world of cultivation, a casual word from a big guy may benefit them for life. Some people even make the cubs extremely attached and eventually practice with the cubs as a study companion. The young woman wanted to compete for this position, but she was just in the key training period and her foundation in cultivation and knowledge was very weak. And her family has been a meridian opener for generations, and this young girl has the highest cultivation level in her family in the past 300 to 500 years. This means that she is a 3-no person in terms of cultivation, and she doesn't have the face to invite a foundation building period cultivator to help her. Yang Zhao looked at the wide courtyard around him. "Can't I pay to invite a foundation building period cultivator?" The young girl was also a little distressed. Now in Lijiang City, anyone with a little ambition will go to Yang Zhao Lake to compete, and even many outsiders have come. Even if I pay more money, they are unwilling to give up this opportunity and give it to me. "Okay, as long as you give me the meridian opening silver needle, I will definitely help you with this matter." Yang Zhao agreed immediately. Although she was also somewhat tempted by Yang Zhao Lake, the child's life was more important. The opportunity to go to Yang Zhao Lake only comes once every 5 years, and the child's life is only one, so it is clear at a glance which is more important. "But I just came to Lijiang and don't know much about this matter. I don't know how to help you." The young girl, "You don't have to worry about this. Just do what I say when the time comes. Let's sign the contract without further ado." Yang Zhao nodded. "Let me be clear in advance. The silver needles need to be evaluated by my elders to see if they can be used for the child. If the silver needles are not suitable for the child, then our contract will be automatically invalidated. The young girl was also very clear and neat. Okay, I will write this prerequisite on the contract. As long as my set of silver needles cannot be used, you just need to return the silver needles to me, and the contract will be invalidated. As she said this, she started to draft the contract, and Yang Zhao corrected a few places that were not to her liking. Then the young girl copied these on the contract, and the two signed. The contract came into effect, and a red line appeared on the wrists of both parties. The young girl looked at the red line on her wrist, and smiled foolishly for a long time, then ran out, and came back again after a while, holding a black wooden box in her arms. This pair of meridian opening silver needles is for you. Yang Zhao took the silver needles and thanked the young girl, then turned around and rushed into the snow without staying for a moment. Time is life, she had to be faster. After returning to the yard where she rented, Yang Zhao sneaked into the house, put the Taoist card on top of the box, pinched his hands, and recited silently, "The sky and the earth are boundless, and the universe is changing. Yang Zhao, I found a pair of magic weapon level silver needles. After you get them, show them to Uncle Gongsun to see if they can be used. If they can't be used, I'll find another one. Guo Fumin Qiang." Okay, I'll tell you the news in time. It was almost 2 hours like this before Guo Fumin Qiang replied to her message. Guo Fumin Qiang, Uncle Master Gongsun said that these silver needles can be used. Comrade Yang has worked so hard. How much silver did you spend this time? Tell me, and I will double the price. Yang Zhao, no, I didn't spend any money on this set of silver needles. I just want to do a favor for the owner of this set of silver needles. Guo Fumin Qiang, it's better to spend money. Favors are the hardest to repay. Yang Zhao also knew this, but the other party didn't want money. Chapter 145, The Material View of the Cultivation World. It was early spring at Xiaoyang Mountain behind Yunnan Temple. The mountain was covered with green grass. The big ginkgo tree on the top of the mountain was lush and leafy, like a canopy, covering half of the mountain top. On the mountainside, a group of 2 young soldiers drove a car carrying large and small boxes of things up the mountain. The driver glanced at the 3 large boxes at the back. Hey, do you think these things we are looking for will be useful to the child? The person sitting in the co-pilot was also a little uncertain. We are mortals and can't see it. Anyway, I have found them all. The Taoist Sun King statues, the Buddhist Buddha statues, and the Christian Jesus statues are all there. That is, we are located in the north. If we were located in the northwest, I would probably find the Allah statue. As for whether it is useful, I really don't know. Alas, the child is too weak. The higher-ups asked us to find these things to protect her. If these things don't work, the 2 of us will look for something else. He couldn't understand these mysterious things, so he could only put the topic aside for the time being, and began to be curious about what his companions were holding. What is this flat box in your hand? Hey, okay, let me show you. As he said that, the co-pilot lifted up a corner of the box. The driver took a look and showed a surprised expression. Why did you bring this thing with you? Did the higher-ups tell you? The co-pilot closed the box proudly. We're looking for something that carries the thoughts of all living beings. I think this thing in my arms is much better than those pieces of earth, stone, and wood in the back seat. The driver also laughed out loud. I think so too, but I don't know if this thing conforms to the material view of the world of cultivation. Anyway, according to the conditions given by the higher-ups, this thing in my arms is the most suitable, just in case. The car drove smoothly to the top of the mountain. Someone stopped the car and checked it carefully before letting them in. The 2 people took down the 3 boxes from the back seat and walked towards the big ginkgo tree. Seeing the 2 of them carrying things up, someone came to greet them. Captain, the things you asked us to find are all here. The captain saw that the boxes in the arms of the 2 of them were quite large, so he took one and held it in his arms. The higher-ups asked us to take the things to ask Master Gongsun. If that doesn't work, you 2 have to go downstairs to look for it. Yes. At this time, a simple military medical tent had been set up under the big ginkgo tree, which was filled with various medical supplies and medical equipment for children. There were more than a dozen medical staff in white coats inside and outside the tent, and occasionally one or two children's hoarse cries could be heard from the tent. The three people walked under the big ginkgo tree, put the 4 boxes in their arms neatly on the ground, saluted the tree first, and then opened the boxes one by one, revealing the contents of the 4 boxes. The captain was also surprised to see the contents of the flat boxes. "How did you get this thing? Where did you find it?" "Hey, I borrowed it from school. I think it's useful, so I took it back on my own initiative." "Uncle Gangson, do you think these 4 things are useful?" The leaves of the big ginkgo tree rustled, and the last flat box flew up by itself, and moved forward a few steps. The young man who was sitting in the co-pilot seat just now became excited all of a sudden. "Uncle Gangson, I think this thing is the most suitable." "I didn't expect you to think so too." The big ginkgo tree didn't say anything. The 3 statues on the ground covered the box by themselves, which meant that these 3 were no longer needed. The captain took the flat box in the air and held it in his arms, and the other 2 took the 3 statues back to the car. These statues were also borrowed by them, and they had to return them after use. Finally, the captain walked into the military medical tent next to him with the box in his arms, opened the lid of the box, and showed it to the people inside. "The last thing is also ready." Everyone in the tent was very happy, and a lady over 50 years old stood up and began to assign tasks. "We are just waiting for it. We can start now. Team 1, check all the things you need. If something happens to the child during the pulse opening process, you can rescue him in time. Team 2, check whether the video recorders are working properly. After these 2 things are ready, we will open the child's pulse. We don't have to worry about the rest." Yes. Everyone responded and ran to get busy. But these 2 things had been checked again and again before, and it didn't take more than 2 minutes to prepare them this time. The lady who was over 50 years old took a small safe out of the tent, followed by 2 military guards. Then, the child's father also carried the young baby and followed everyone to an open space under the big ginkgo tree. The lady and the 2 military guards next to her scanned the handprints and irises on the safe respectively. The safe opened with a click, revealing a green pulse opening leaf inside. Next to the pulse opening leaf was the box of pulse opening silver needles that Yang Zhao had run around for a day to get. "Master Gangson, please open the pulse for this child. Today is my birthday, so I will update once." Chapter 146, Baby. Spring in the north is always windy, and the wind on the top of the mountain is stronger, blowing people's cheeks cold. The baby was wrapped in a swaddle and held by his father, not even daring to show his little face. The big ginkgo tree was rustling in the wind, and suddenly, the wind on the top of the mountain stopped abruptly, and the noisy wind around was quieted in an instant. Several leaves on the big ginkgo tree quickly turned yellow, and then the temperature under the tree slowly rose until everyone under the tree could no longer bear it, and the temperature stabilized. 2 young men below were muttering to themselves. "I remember that it was Uncle Gangson who helped us to open the pulses of the first batch. It was so cold at that time. We opened the pulses while freezing." "Nonsense. How can your thick skin compare with this 3-month-old cutie? Do you have any shame?" "But considering Uncle Gangson's age, I should also be a little cutie in front of him. The difference between me and that baby is only about 20 years. Get lost. I should peel off your face and see if you are a double-faced person. So being a human cub is the advantage." The lady holding the safe next to them saw that the 2 of them were mumbling endlessly and coughed lightly. "You are standing here to help open the pulses of the children, not to have a tea party. After today, you should go back to the mountain to practice. I will invite someone else next time." The 2 young people put away their playful smiles at once, and there was a hint of pleading in their expressions. "Director Lau, I'm just a bit rude, but my attitude is absolutely fine. As a student of traditional Chinese medicine, opening the pulse is my job." "Director Lau, let's shut up now." Director Lau glared at the 2 of them again, and then said to the father holding the child, "Take off all the child's clothes." Then, he turned around and said to everyone present, "Those who will help with the acupuncture should take off their thick clothes and make sure to wipe their hands clean." "Yes." The 2 young people who had just muttered, and an old man next to them took off their thick clothes and washed their hands with the disinfectant they brought with them. The three people prepared the silver needles and vane leaves, and finally the naked baby slowly floated into the air. Perhaps it was out of its father's arms and felt insecure, so the baby fluttered its hands and feet and cried hoarsely. Then the flat box in the captain's arms opened its lid by itself, and a 5-star red flag flew out of it and covered the child's head. Slowly, the baby stopped struggling and became quiet. Let's get started. This time the old man took the lead in opening the pulse, and the two young men assisted him. It took a very long time to open the baby's pulse. First, it was the first time for everyone to open the baby's pulse. The child was too young and too thin, so the depth of the acupuncture points had to be carefully considered. Second, the baby's body was very weak due to the disease, so the pulse opening naturally had to be slow, so that the baby's body had time to adapt. As more and more silver needles were inserted into the baby's body, the onlookers dared not make a sound, for fear of disturbing the baby. If he cried and fluttered his hands and feet, the silver needles on his body might move. Fortunately, the whole process of inserting the needles went smoothly. There are a total of 24 meridians in the 12 main meridians, plus the 8 extraordinary meridians. A total of 96 needles were inserted into the baby's body. The silver needles were shining, and the baby looked like a little hedgehog. The green veins floated between the child and the red flag, and the silver needles on the baby's body were connected by thin green rays. After a period of time, the thin green light gradually faded until it disappeared. The two young men who assisted in opening the pulse hurriedly put the pulse leaves back into Director Lau's safe. The old man stayed by the child's side and began to pull out the silver needles from the baby one by one in order, sorted them out, and also put them in Director Lau's safe. Director Lau counted the number of silver needles, locked the safe again, and handed it to the soldier behind him. The two men said nothing, picked up the box, and got on a small security car, driving down the mountain. But no one present cared about the whereabouts of the two soldiers. Their eyes were fixed on the baby, waiting for him to wake up. But an hour passed, 2 hours passed, and the baby still showed no signs of waking up. The child's father couldn't help it anymore, squatting on the ground with tears streaming down his face. The people on both sides could only pat him on the shoulders and said nothing. 3 hours, 4 hours. Gradually, when the golden crow sank to the west, the child finally moved. He first urinated, and then cried out, "Awake, this child is awake. My child is awake." The crowd couldn't help but cheer, and everyone's face was filled with excitement. Hearing the noise around, the baby cried even more miserably. Director Lau quickly clapped his hands and suppressed the shouts of the crowd. Okay, be quiet, don't scare the child." The red flag above the baby slowly flew down and wrapped him inside, leaving only a small head exposed outside, and slowly shook. After a while, the baby stopped crying. Now the baby's meridians have been opened successfully, and then it depends on Uncle Gongsun to help him forcibly awaken his spirit. The spiritual power of the earth is like a Dead Sea. If a person opens his meridians alone, it will not significantly improve his physical fitness. In order to resist the corrosion of neuroblastoma on the child and let his body have the capital for subsequent treatment, he can only forcibly awaken his spirit, so that the spiritual energy can nourish his body and strengthen his physique. The two young people who have opened their meridians and awakened their spirits reminded Director Lau, "Director, the child's spirit will be awakened later, and the noise may be a bit loud. Okay, let's keep an eye on the video recorders around." Slowly, the mountaintop began to quiet down. The wind started to blow, and then the wind around became louder and louder, blowing everyone down. In a moment, the sound of water came to my ears, and in less than a moment, the sound of water turned into a surging river, hitting everyone present. The two young men who had already opened their meridians and awakened their spirits shuddered violently and shouted, "Quick, leave the mountaintop quickly, these spiritual energies will crush you to death. Hurry up. The two of us will pack up the video equipment." Director Lau also reacted, and while calling everyone to retreat, he picked up a video recorder and ran out. This machine is more precious than a person. If a person falls, it will be fine, but if it falls, the video inside may be lost. There are important experimental data that cannot be replicated. The invisible water flow suddenly increased, and the surging river suddenly turned into a huge wave, hitting everyone with an overwhelming momentum. Several elderly people among them fell to the ground when their legs went weak. The young man ran back against the huge waves, helped the elderly people and ran out. Young people, pay attention to the elderly around you. The invisible huge waves had made everyone breathless, and some people's movement slowed down. Don't stop, run, run. Fortunately, the range of the agitated spiritual energy was not large. The two young people who had opened their meridians were several times faster than the others. In less than 10 seconds, they had already broken out of the range of the huge waves. The two young people gently put the equipment in their arms on the ground, turned around and rushed into the huge waves to help others. In less than 20 seconds, everyone ran out. Several elderly people couldn't stand it and sat down on the ground. Director Lau asked the two young people who had opened their meridians, while panting and pressing his heart, "What's going on? You should have told us first, when the noise was so loud." The two young men were also ashamed. "Director Lau, I'm really sorry. When we opened the meridians with the roaring west wind, the noise was not so loud. We were optimistic about the situation here." Director Lau waved his hand and looked at the baby wrapped in the 5-star red flag with concern. "Everyone underestimated it. This is my responsibility. I should have been more cautious. I just don't know if the child can bear it." The child's father came to Director Lau. It's okay. I believe in Uncle Gangson and our red flag. My child will be fine." I don't know if this sentence is to comfort others or to comfort himself. In less than 2 seconds, the place where the spiritual power was agitated suddenly darkened, and the next moment the red swaddling cloth was directly submerged in the darkness, and no trace could be seen. The father subconsciously rushed in, but was quickly pulled back by the people on both sides. "Don't be impulsive, calm down. If you don't let me go in and take a look. I just want to take a look." The young father struggled forward like crazy, and the people on both sides couldn't hold him down for a while. Director Lau walked over and slapped him. "Zioliu. Now is the critical moment for the child. Don't mess with Master Gangson." The young father burst into tears when he heard this and collapsed to the ground like a deflated doll. Fortunately, this process did not take long. Within half a minute, the strange situation under the big ginkgo tree disappeared, revealing the bright red swaddling clothes inside. The baby in the swaddling clothes cried heartbreakingly. The young father heard the sound and ran over, grabbed the child and coaxed him. Director Lau ran over to grab the child and tore open the red swaddling clothes. "First see if the child is pooping." She hurriedly packed up the child and put clothes on the child again. Someone rinsed the dirty red flag with water and put it in the flat box and then cleaned it thoroughly later. Zioliu, the father, was asked to prepare the milk powder. When the pacifier was put into the baby's mouth, the baby was already crying and gasping for breath. After everything was cleaned up, Director Lau returned the baby to Zioliu and looked at everyone excitedly. "The first case of opening the pulse and revitalizing the spirit of an infant in my country was a complete success." The people around applauded loudly, and the baby who was breastfeeding was frightened and cried again. Quiet. The child was scared again. Although the applause stopped abruptly, everyone couldn't help but smile. Zioliu carried the child to the medical tent. Some people followed to check on the child, and others walked a few steps forward and thanked the big ginkgo tree. "Uncle Gangson, thank you for your great help this time." The big ginkgo tree shook its leaves slightly, as if to say you're welcome. Today I combined 2 chapters into one. Chapter 147, Recruiting. The next day, Yang Zhao received a message from Guo Fuminamum Kailang, saying that the child's parents had no choice but to thank her in person, so they wanted to give her some money to thank her for her help. Yang Zhao declined. She had a lot of money in her hands now, and she didn't help for money in the first place. But later, Yang's father, who had not been in contact for a long time, sent her a WeChat message, saying that a young woman holding a baby found them, kowtowed to them, and left 100,000 yuan. The old couple had never seen so much cash, so they pushed it back with some persuasion. But this incident made the old couple suspicious, and they couldn't sleep well. Yang Zhao could only briefly tell Yang's father about this matter. Fortunately, I didn't take the money. The child is still sick. If I leave this money, how can the child be treated in the future? Dad is kind and righteous, otherwise how can you say that you have high moral character? After saying a few nice words to make Yang's father happy, her parents finally began to let go of their grudges and contacted her frequently. Since her brother Yang Yun opened his meridians and became a spirit, in order to keep it secret, his brother never logged into the chat software again, which led to Yang Zhao's long-term disconnection with her family. Even when she wanted to leave some money for her family through Guo Fu Minimum Kyang several times before, the old couple disagreed. This was an unexpected surprise, and Yang Zhao was so happy that she couldn't control her tears. Taking advantage of the heavy snow in the past few days and nothing happening at Junzhou Lake, Yang Zhao first registered her travel agency in the Foreign Affairs Office of Lianjing. After the officials of the office investigated the previous records of her travel agency, they happily signed a contract with her, allowing her to open a travel agency in Lianjing. On that day, a group of Xiaodao people began their adventure in Lianjing in the heavy snow. While Yang Zhao was helping them pay like an old woman, she couldn't help but think about the travel agency recruiting people again. At least she had to free herself from these trivial matters. As soon as she thought of it, she led a group of Xiaodao people to find a dental shop, gave money, and posted a recruitment notice. The requirements were simple: a mild temper, healthy hands and feet, able to run and jump, familiar with the geography of Lianjing, and able to lead the Xiaodao people to travel and shop in Lianjing. The monthly salary was 5 taels of silver. Everything in Lianjing was expensive, and the prices in Kangcheng were not worth mentioning in comparison. The next morning, someone found her in the heavy snow. A dark and thin boy, shivering in thin clothes, knocked on Yang Zhao's door. "My name is Zhang He. I'm 16 this year. I saw you recruiting workers at the dental shop. Do you think I can do it?" Yang Zhao could tell at a glance that he had not practiced before, so he quickly let him into the house and summoned a small fireball to increase the temperature in the house. After a long while, the young man named Zhang He finally recovered. Yang Zhao asked him some basic information and then found a map of Lianjing and asked him to recognize the place. This Zhang He was a native of Lianjing and his home was nearby. He had worked odd jobs in various stores to make a living since he was a child, so he was very familiar with the area where Yang Zhao rented a house, and he knew exactly what good things were in each store. He had also heard of other famous places in Licheng, which meant that he would not get lost if he was sent out. This condition was good, and Yang Zhao decided on the spot. The two signed a written contract. Yang Zhao first gave Zhang He half a month's salary and asked him to go back and buy a cotton padded jacket so that he could get better and go to work tomorrow. "I don't want you to get sick and can't go to work tomorrow." "Thank you, boss." Zhang He took the silver with many thanks, turned around and ran into the wind and snow again. In the afternoon, she recruited 2 more girls who were also locals, poor, and familiar with Lianjing. Then Yang Zhao went to the dental shop to cancel the recruitment notice and temporarily hired the 3 of them. After the recruitment was settled, Yang Zhao had a headache about how to pay for the little bean man's shopping. The reason why Yang Zhao always paid with silver was purely because he didn't trust the security of Huanglang Gang. But there haven't been any major security issues in recent days, so she can let go of the silver. Yang Zhao discussed with Guo Fu Minqiang on her phone, and she would prepare a batch of purses, and the little bean people would go shopping with the silver in the future. In the future, Yang Zhao only needs to summon the little bean people, and 3 employees will take these little bean people to explore and shop in 3 directions, completely freeing him. Finally, the sky cleared up, and the heavy snow for several days decorated the world with silver, elegant and majestic. On the 3rd day of clear weather, people came and went around Junzhou Lake. Yang Zhao and the young girl who provided the silver needles also came, and Yang Zhao was followed by a group of little bean people. It was still far away from the lake, and Yang Zhao felt that the hair on his body stood up, and his heart was stuffy. The feeling of a fierce beast next to her made her brain flash red lights frequently. She couldn't help licking her lips, gently deepening her breath to calm herself down. She glanced at Yang Zhao Lake with fear, and then scanned the surroundings calmly. It seems that some big shots have come, and these big shots have bad tempers. The young girl next to her is called Liu Sheng. She looked at the group of little beans behind him and asked curiously, "I'm in the cross-border tourism business. They come here to join in the fun. They won't cause you any trouble." Liu Sheng just looked at them curiously and didn't care too much. It's just a traction bean, not a rare thing. Yang Zhao began to ask her about how to compete for the job. There are at least thousands of people gathered around here, and the pressure of competition is self-evident. How should I write the following? I'm applying for a tutor for my child. I don't want to write about fighting and killing. No matter how I change it, it doesn't suit my heart. Underscore open bracket colon closed bracket underscore. Chapter 148, Older Mortal. Hearing Yang Zhao's question, Liu Sheng also had a headache. The people who come every time are different. Every time, the seniors make the rules themselves. You ask me, but I don't know. Yang Zhao, do you have a target person? There are several, but the position of Yang Zhao Lake is to be competed for. I don't know if these people can stay in Yang Zhao Lake in the end. I have collected information for more than half a year, but I don't know if it will be useful. Liu Sheng's eyes were filled with worry. Yang Zhao said seriously, "Anyway, I will help you." Liu Sheng sighed and continued to wait by the side. Yang Zhao pointed to the lake and said, "Then I will take these little beam people to stroll over there. Call me if there is anything." Liu Sheng, go, just don't go too far. The wind and snow in Lijiang had just stopped for a few days, and the surroundings were all white. Only Yang Zhao Lake was still blue and there was no sign of freezing. Maybe the temperature around was too low, and bursts of white mist rose from the lake, blocking people's sight. Could it be that all these thousands of miles of lakes are hot springs? Yang Zhao was interested in the lake when she first saw it. She led the little bean people to the lake, stretched out her finger to touch the water, and found that the lake water was a little warmer than the surrounding environment. She licked her finger and spit it out. The little bean people next to her saw her action, and began to ask, "How is the lake water?" Yang Zhao looked at the green water plants in the lake and said, "It's not a saltwater lake, and there is no peculiar smell. Maybe there is a hot spring underneath, but I guess it may be due to human factors. Even if the lake is large, a freshwater lake cannot not freeze in the continuous low temperature." The little bean people whispered to each other for a few words, dispersed, and carefully explored Yang Zhao Lake. Yang Zhao adjusted the mobile phone she was carrying while standing up. Whether it was a strange beast or a real person, she wanted to record it. Even the little bean people carried miniature cameras in their pockets. There were many people around Yang Zhao Lake this time, and everyone was looking at these big shots. Relatively speaking, they were not so sensitive to curious eyes. She didn't dare to take a sneak shot face to face. After another half an hour, more people gathered at Yang Zhao Lake. When there were too many people, this place could not be quiet. The surroundings were bustling like a busy city. Then the lake water slowly rippled, and an ethereal voice sounded gently in everyone's ears. "Come over if you want to stay at Yang Zhao Lake." Everyone's expressions were all lifted. Coming. I saw that the sky, that was originally empty, suddenly appeared with many figures, as if they had been there. These figures were people and animals, and even saw a few that looked like plants, fish, and insects. When Yang Zhao was adjusting the angle of her backpack to record the video in the air, she suddenly felt a force slowly but firmly pushing her to the left. In less than a moment, a large open space appeared on her right, and a figure holding an egg stood in the middle facing the lake. If you look down from a high place, you will find that there are already several such blank areas in the crowd of Yang Zhao Lake. Seeing these people, Yang Zhao's heart was relieved instead. It was much better to have this beast in front of her than not seeing it. She tilted her head and asked Liu Sheng beside her, "Have you seen your target this time?" Liu Sheng looked up and down, and after a long time of searching, he was a little dumbfounded. "I only know their names, but I don't know what they look like. Although I have collected simple information, I still can't match their appearance. The money I spent on collecting information in the past 6 months has been wasted." Yang Zhao coughed lightly and signaled her to lower her voice. It would be bad if these big shots heard it. In any case, this is also a purposeful collection of other people's information. If someone catches this handle and beats you up, you will have nothing to say. Liu Sheng opened his mouth helplessly, glanced at the person standing in the open space on the left, and finally swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Then, figures began to float up in Yang Zhao Lake. Many of them stood on the lake in the distance, and they could not see anything because of the fog. Those standing on the lake should be the parents of the 20 or so cubs who have lived in the lake for 5 years. A clear male voice resounded across the lake. Old Fuchsen, what are the rules this time? After a moment, the ethereal voice sounded again. What rules can I have? Haven't you always made the rules yourself? A soft female voice sounded in the air. Hey, do you have to watch us fight? TSK, Old Fuchsen, your interest is still so bad. Why are you so greedy for the flesh and blood of us? Yang Zhao turned around and saw that it was the master holding the egg beside her who spoke. The ethereal voice was still flat. Yunzun, it is right for me to be greedy for your flesh and blood. Who in this world doesn't want your flesh and blood? If someone is willing to cut off their flesh, you can choose any position in my lake. Old Fuchsen, you are really greedy. It seems that the rules this year still need to be beaten. Although these people talked lively, no one was willing to take the first step. Chapter 149, Green Light. Yang Zhao listened to those people bickering with great interest, while extracting some useful information from those words. The owner of Yang Zhao Lake was respectfully called Fuchsen, and the word old means that people respect his lifespan. In the world of cultivation, being called old by a big shot means that the age is definitely beyond Yang Zhao's imagination. This old Fuchsen has been in Yang Zhao Lake for who knows how many years, and no one knows whether he is a human, a beast, a demon, or a fairy. But he is extremely powerful, and it is certain that he can shock one side. Otherwise, Yang Zhao Lake is so close to Lijiang, and the court would have driven people away long ago. How could they allow others to sleep soundly beside the bed? Moreover, looking at the actions of these big shots, even if so many people gathered together, the old Fuchsen did not seem to be afraid. Instead, those people were afraid of the old Fuchsen. Seeing that the big shots had quieted down, the ethereal voice continued to soundly sound. You can fight as you want, but if you want to fight, the fighting must be within the scope of Yang Zhao Lake, otherwise I will not recognize it. This time, the charming female voice that spoke originally sounded again. You use this lake as a threat every time, and you never change your tricks. Old Fuchsen, you eat so much every time, and you are not afraid of hurting your stomach. I never force anyone. Please do as you please. Old Fuchsen still spoke in a leisurely tone. He said this with confidence. The 3 roads of water, air, and space were silent for a moment, and the tense atmosphere enveloped everyone. No one knew who made the first move. All those who intended to compete for the position in the lake rose to the sky unanimously, until they all turned into small black dots and stopped. Afterwards, the entire Yang Zhao Lake was flooded with a faint green light. This light rose from the lake, passed over the heads of Yang Zhao and his people, and rushed out to the surroundings as fast as a flood. Yang Zhao hurriedly flew up a little, and turned to look at Lijiang. The green light, like a tide, rushed towards Lijiang fiercely without any hesitation. When the green light was about 10 miles away from the Beijing city wall, a brilliant voice came from Lijiang. Old Fuchsen, we've passed. As soon as the man finished speaking, the green light stopped abruptly. The surging green light was like a tide hitting a cliff, and was blocked back. In comparison, the green light in other directions was advancing smoothly, and they did not encounter any obstacles at all. As far as Yang Zhao could see, it was all green light, and she couldn't tell how far it extended. She originally wanted to record the sky with her mobile phone, but now she couldn't see the human figures and black dots above through the green light. But she didn't dare to fly up to watch the fun. What if some big guy didn't like her and gave her a slap? It is estimated that one finger of those people could take her life. In fact, it was not just her. The group of people on the nearby lakeshore all looked up, staring at the sky through the green light, but they did not dare to move. Their faces were full of excitement and desire, but no one dared to fly up to watch the excitement. Yang Zhao walked over and chatted with Liu Sheng. What do you think this green light is for? Liu Sheng looked up and said indifferently, it can't be to protect us. It's probably to catch the blood dripping from the sky. Yang Zhao thought so in his heart. The old floating fairy in Yang Zhao Lake was able to vacate his home to run a nursery just for that little bit of flesh and blood. Such a precious thing. He certainly didn't want others to take advantage of it. Gradually, people on the ground could see some bright spots flashing in the sky through the green light. These spots flickered, fleeting, and were extremely dazzling. But not long after, a deafening roar swept across the ground, and a huge airwave pressed down from the sky, catching the people below off guard. Some people with less cultivation fell directly to the ground, while those with higher cultivation were also covered in dust, with their hair and clothes in disarray. More than half of the little beam people around Yang Zhao died on the spot, and the remaining few were lying on the ground, unable to get up for a long time. Yang Zhao quickly squatted down to ask about the little beam people's situation. We are all fine, but our bodies are too weak. I feel like my whole body is falling apart. I was shocked, and my arms were about to fall off. Just as these little beam people were about to struggle to get up, a huge airwave suddenly hit from the sky and pressed them back to the ground. Even Yang Zhao was hit hard by the sudden airwave and almost fell into the snow with his head down. At this moment, only 1 in 10 little bean people lying on the ground survived, and the few that were left also lay on the ground and could not struggle anymore. Liu Sheng, who was standing next to him, looked a little strange after seeing this. Senior Yang, the fight above won't stop for a while. Will these little beam people cause you trouble in the future? No, they are all willing. As soon as Yang Zhao finished speaking, the next airflow had already hit him, and the strong impact made the few remaining little bean people poof and turn back into beans. So far, the little bean people who came to Yang Zhao Lake with Yang Zhao to collect intelligence were all annihilated, and no one survived. Yang Zhao shook her head, crouched down and picked up all the purses scattered on the ground, counted the number of purses, and found that the number did not match. First, she stuffed the purses she found into the Kayankan bag in her arms, and she crouched down and began to search around. These purses not only contained silver, but also macro cameras and amulets. She had to find all these things back. The deposit for a talisman was 10 taels of silver, and she felt painful when she lost one. The wind waves in the sky were getting stronger and stronger, and the crowd on the ground was like the grass in the strong wind, swaying with the wind waves. Liu Sheng was swayed by the wind waves and almost fell to the ground. She looked at Yang Zhao for a long time without straightening up, and curiously followed him and asked, "Are you still looking for purses? Are those purses important?" Yang Zhao straightened up and replied, "There is silver in it. If it is lost, I will pay it back at the original price. This is not your problem. Can you think of a way to fix me? I feel like I will vomit if this goes on." Yang Zhao waved her hand, and the bracelet on her wrist turned into a spear. She thrust the spearhead of the dragon spear down and stabbed it into the ground with force, and then pulled Liu Sheng over. "Just hold this spear." Liu Sheng held the spear with a confused look on his face and watched her bend down again. Yang Zhao searched on the ground for a long time, but in the end he still couldn't find 2 purses. She couldn't help but feel a little toothache, but she could only accept this fact. Now she could only hope that the cameras in the purses were crushed by someone, or pray that the person who picked up the purse only cared about the silver inside. When Yang Zhao looked up, he saw Liu Sheng entangled with the Jiana long spear like a vine. Chapter 150, Casting a net to catch fish. At this time, Yang Zhao realized that the crowd around him had already fallen down in a large area and could only passively accept the ravages of the aftermath of the battle in the sky. There were only a few hundred people who could move freely like Yang Zhao, and even these few hundred people could only flee and passively defend themselves when facing the airwave attack from the sky. So it was already very decent for someone like Liu Sheng. At least she could still stand with the support of the Jiana long spear. The snow on the lakeside was blown up into the sky by the previous airwave and was severely pressed down by the next airwave. But in just a moment, the people on the shore were covered with snow residue. Yang Zhao rushed back to Liu Sheng and took out the spiritual sword given to her by the old shark named Qin from the Kayankan bag. She injected spiritual power into the sword, and the small sword became larger with a sound, reflecting the cold light under the green light in the sky. She held the spiritual sword and stared at the sky closely. When the next airwave came with the distortion of light, she swung her long sword hard, and the pale white sword light soared into the sky. Clang. Woohoo. The sword light with a strange sound broke the airwaves in the area above their heads. Clang. 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 Woohoo. The continuous strange sound wave swept across the lake shore, and all of a sudden, everyone nearby turned their eyes to Yang Zhao. Even Li Yusheng, who was holding a gun next to her, was startled. Senior Yang, can't you feel the pressure from those people in the sky? I was so shocked that I dare not use my spiritual power recklessly. Pressure? Yang Zhao casually swung out another sword light and broke the airwaves that hit again. I don't feel any signs of my spiritual power not running smoothly, let alone pressure. The word pressure is too unfamiliar to her as a modern person. At most, she can see it once or twice in novels. But the novels are written in a mysterious way. People who read novels feel very satisfied when they think about it in their minds, but when it is really brought into reality, no one knows what it feels like. This is all the imagination of the scientific society. Li Yusheng, it's the feeling of a ferocious beast beside you, and it will eat you if you move. To be more precise, it's fear. Yang Zhao was a little confused when she heard this. She pointed to the sky and then to the Junzhao lake next to her. I had this feeling when we first came to the lake. It's been several hours. Haven't you adapted yet? Besides, who in this lake in the sky would take us seriously? In the eyes of those bigwigs, the thousands of people on the shore were probably not much better than ants. It was really redundant to give them a look. Li Yusheng watched her smash the airwaves above her head with sword after sword, as if she had seen a monster. Why aren't you afraid? Why not? Yang Zhao waved her sword and thought absent-mindedly. She had some physical fear at first, but not much psychological fear. Since she crossed here, she knew that fear was the most useless thing. Whether it was Fang Shili, the big meteorite falling from the sky, or even the Jiana long spear, they almost took her life. If she let fear control her actions, her body might have been cold long ago. Besides, she was afraid of nuclear bombs, which did not affect her love for Miss Qiu. Even in her hometown, many people had some strange feelings towards this kind of weapon, and Yang Zhao was one of them. Li Yusheng held the Jiana long spear and looked at Yang Zhao with a dull look in his eyes, but he was still swinging the sword again and again, and he couldn't help swallowing his saliva. Maybe all the cultivators in the Foundation building period were like this, and it was because he, a key refining cultivator, was short-sighted. But this one was so powerful, so wouldn't it be more likely that he would be selected? Li Yusheng looked around again and found that only Yang Zhao chose to resist, and the others, regardless of the depth of their cultivation, were passively enduring the ravages of the airwaves. Was it because he was short-sighted? Li Yusheng suddenly became a little uncertain. She looked at the ignorant and fearless Yang Zhao again. Maybe those predecessors in the Foundation building period didn't want to offend others and stand out. Senior Yang came to help him this time after all, so he was less respectful of those big shots in the sky. But in this way, would his chance be missed because of his recklessness? What if those big shots thought Senior Yang was arrogant? Would he be implicated because of this? For a moment, Li Yusheng was a little worried about gains and losses, and he looked at Yang Zhao with a look of hesitation. In this way, the sky was tossed for half an hour before it became quiet. Then the layer of green light above everyone's head was like a tablecloth that was suddenly pulled out, and it was instantly rolled back into the lake and disappeared. The movement was so fast that people couldn't react. In an instant, the green light in the sky turned into a normal sunny day, and the snow that was still flying in the sky slowly fell down and gradually returned to calm. As soon as the green light disappeared, many figures suddenly appeared on the lake. Each of these people was far away from each other, and they were wrapped in the thick fog on the lake. It was difficult to see their figures clearly, but these people were arrogant and frightening. Even if they stood on the lake and didn't say a word, they suppressed the thousands of people on the lakeside to be silent, and you could hear a pin drop. Yang Zhao even sensed a hint of blood from some people, although she couldn't see their faces clearly. After a while, the arrogance of these people was withdrawn, and the lake's surface returned to peace. The people by the lake finally dared to breathe. It seems that these people are the winners. They have fought for 5 years for their cubs in Junzhao Lake. And then, some of these big shots will choose some people on the shore to take care of their cubs. Everyone by the lake became excited all of a sudden, and each of them stretched their heads, waiting for a senior to choose a nanny for their cubs. Not all cubs will choose a nanny today, some will be brought directly from home. Some species like to be alone, or because of family struggles and other reasons, they don't bring people at home, so they will choose people by the lake. Yang Zhao pulled up the giant long spear beside Liu Sheng, shrunk it and buckled it between his wrists. What should we do next? Liu Sheng looked at the lake with shining eyes. Wait, all those who want to recruit people for their cubs will send messages, and then you will fly me over. If you can fly faster, I may try a few more. This is using Yang Zhao as a means of transportation. Yang Zhao, do you have a favorite? We can go there first. Hey, why do you mention this? Liu Sheng looked very free and easy and said, how can I know where the favorite one is if I can't even meet the face? Besides, it would be great if anyone would accept me. I don't have the right to be picky. This is also true. These thousands of people look like college graduates who have just graduated and are looking for jobs. The most important thing is to cast a wide net to catch fish. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.